Jonas Cooper sighed in frustration as he hovered over his laptop, the Wi-Fi signal flickering yet again. It was a quiet afternoon in Arbor Heights, and Jonas had planned to finish some online errands. However, his internet kept dropping for unexplained reasons. At first, he assumed it was a typical router glitch, something he could fix by rebooting the device. But after the third disconnection, Jonas decided to check his router settings more thoroughly. Peering at the router's interface, Jonas noticed an unknown device connected to his network, labeled only with an unfamiliar string of letters and numbers. He stared at it in confusion. Nobody else lived in his home, so who could be accessing his internet? A chill of unease crawled up his spine. He realized this could be more than a random fluke. If someone was using his Wi-Fi without permission, what else might they be snooping on? Jonas's mind raced with possibilities. Was it a casual neighbor piggybacking on his internet to save a few dollars, or something more sinister? He recalled stories about identity theft and unauthorized surveillance. Though he tried to remain calm, the idea of a stranger lurking on his private network unsettled him. Determined to protect himself, Jonas quickly decided on the most basic line of defense: change his Wi-Fi password to lock out any unauthorized users. Stepping outside to reset the router from its main switch, his older setup required manual intervention. Jonas spotted his neighbor, Bethany Green, peering at him from across the fence. She was known in Arbor Heights for her watchful eye and tendency to involve herself in local matters. Bethany's gaze was sharp, flicking from Jonas's router in his hands to the cables he was fiddling with. Jonas offered a cordial nod, though he sensed her curiosity brimming. Bethany, however, seemed more suspicious than curious. Her brow furrowed as she observed Jonas tinkering with the router. From her vantage point, it might have looked like he was installing something strange rather than simply resetting equipment. Jonas tried to shrug off any concern, guessing she was merely inquisitive. But the way she stared at him carried an edge of distrust. With a resolute push of a switch, Jonas completed the password change and powered everything back on. Although the unknown device was presumably kicked off his network, his relief was short-lived. He couldn't ignore the lingering notion that someone had deliberately infiltrated his Wi-Fi. As he walked back indoors, Jonas glimpsed Bethany Green pulling out her phone. A hint of worry flickered across his mind. He had no clue how quickly that single suspicious look from Bethany might escalate events. The next morning, Jonas Cooper woke to an unexpectedly loud knock on his front door. Sliding on a robe, he answered it to find two police officers standing on his porch. Their stern expressions put him on edge immediately. One officer, badge reading Officer Patel, offered a courteous but serious nod. "Mr. Cooper," she asked. "We received a call about suspicious behavior at this address. May we come in and ask a few questions?" Jonas blinked in surprise, grogginess giving way to alarm. Suspicious behavior? About what? Officer Patel exchanged a glance with her partner, Officer Quinn, before replying. "Your neighbor, Ms. Bethany Green, reported seeing you do something unusual with electronic equipment outside. She expressed concerns of potential criminal activity. We're here to clarify the situation." Jonas sighed, frustration mounting. He realized immediately that Bethany had turned last evening's simple router reset into a major concern. "Sure, come in. I'll explain." Leading the officers into his modest living room, Jonas pointed to the small desk where his router and laptop Saturday. "This is what I was doing," he said, tapping the router. "Someone was piggybacking on my Wi-Fi, and I changed my password. That's all." Officer Patel nodded thoughtfully, while Officer Quinn asked, "So there was no illegal act going on?" "Not on my part," Jonas replied flatly. "I discovered an unfamiliar device connected to my home network. I have no idea who it belonged to, but it wasn't me." Within moments, Bethany Green appeared at the doorway, clearly having followed the officers over. Her expression was a mixture of triumph and suspicion, as if she anticipated catching Jonas in a guilty confession. She folded her arms. "I saw you tampering with something last night. How do we know you weren't setting up devices to spy on neighbors or messing with some lines out there?" Jonas tried to remain calm. "Ms. Green, I was just protecting my own network from unauthorized access." The officers surveyed the scene, noticing how normal everything looked. Jonas's living room was tidy, free of any bizarre equipment or suspicious contraptions. Officer Patel asked if Jonas would allow them to briefly check his router logs. Jonas agreed without hesitation, stepping aside to let them examine the device's interface on his laptop. As they scrolled through the router's settings, Officer Quinn noticed the logs indicating repeated unknown connections to Jonas's network. "It seems Mr. Cooper here actually is a victim of unauthorized use," Quinn observed. "Somebody has been accessing his Wi-Fi. The logs show attempts at unusual hours, too." Bethany's face flickered with confusion. "But then, why did I see him out there messing with wires so late at night?" she pressed, unwilling to let go of her suspicions. Jonas explained calmly, "Because the older hardware sometimes needs a manual reset from the outside box. I was just changing the password. That's it." He gestured to the cable box out back. "Whoever was on my Wi-Fi must have been collecting data or intercepting something. I was concerned they might be spying, not me." Still skeptical, Bethany huffed. "But what if?" Officer Patel cut her off gently. "Ms. Green, from what we see here, Mr. Cooper's actions are legitimate. There's a bigger question: who has been infiltrating his network and for what purpose?" The realization dawned on Bethany's face, her earlier bravado softening. I just wanted to keep the neighborhood safe," she stammered. Officer Quinn rose from the desk, expression serious. "Mr. Cooper, do you mind if we forward these router logs to our cyber unit? If someone local is piggybacking on your network, they might be doing the same to others, and possibly collecting private information." Jonas nodded. "Do whatever it takes. I want them caught. This could be happening to the entire block for all we know." Within an hour, the police had begun a deeper inquiry. As the initial data was relayed, more neighbors emerged, reporting weird internet slowdowns or odd camera glitches with their security systems. Bethany Green, now anxious about her own home's vulnerability, realized Jonas might not have been the threat at all. She observed quietly as the officers questioned other residents on the block. Officer Patel received a call from the cyber unit, stepping aside to answer. When she returned, her tone was urgent. "We have a lead. There's unauthorized Wi-Fi infiltration happening across multiple addresses in this neighborhood, including Ms. Green's router. The intruder might have accessed personal security cams, even Ring doorbells, snooping on private feeds." Bethany's eyes went wide. "On my network too. That means," she trailed off, dread creeping into her voice. Jonas watched her, empathizing despite the headache she'd caused him. After all, they were both potential victims here. Officer Quinn asked Jonas if he had neighbors or acquaintances with the tech savvy to carry this off. Before Jonas could reply, Bethany exhaled sharply. "My nephew, Marcus Green, is quite good with computers, but he's just a teenager who helps me with basic stuff like TV settings." She paused, as though a realization struck. "He visits on weekends. I can't imagine he'd do anything like this, though." The mention of Marcus piqued the officers' interest. They requested a talk with him, and Bethany, albeit reluctantly, gave them her nephew's contact details. Jonas, still reeling from the turn of events, listened intently. If this was some teenage prank, it had escalated far beyond normal teenage mischief. Later that evening, after collecting digital evidence, the police traced the suspicious MAC addresses to a local IP that pointed back to Bethany's own extended property, specifically to her nephew, Marcus Green. Confronted with these findings, Marcus confessed in a quavering voice that he'd hacked into neighbors' Wi-Fi routers, just for fun, testing out code he'd learned online. Fascinated by the possibility of peeking into security cameras, he had gone from idle curiosity to invasive surveillance. As the seriousness dawned on him, Marcus realized these pranks carried legal consequences. Officer Patel placed him under arrest for unauthorized access and unlawful surveillance. Bethany, horrified, watched as her nephew's bravado collapsed into remorse. Jonas stood nearby, a swirl of emotions roiling within him, relief that the culprit was caught, anger at the breach of privacy, and pity for a teen who'd taken an online experiment too far. Bethany, shaken, turned to Jonas with a trembling apology. "I'm sorry. I was so certain you were the threat, and it turns out it was Marcus invading your privacy. I jumped to conclusions." Jonas responded calmly. "I understand wanting to protect the neighborhood, Ms. Green. But next time, gather the facts before you accuse someone." He paused, glancing at Marcus as the officers led him away. "We all need to stay vigilant about our assumptions, especially about each other." Bethany's cheeks burned. She murmured a low, "Thank you," tears welling in her eyes. She realized, perhaps too late, that suspicion can be as harmful as the wrongdoing it tries to expose if not grounded in actual evidence. Officer Quinn politely guided Bethany aside to handle formal statements. As Jonas prepared to leave, he turned to Bethany with a final piece of advice: "We can't let fear drive us to label each other as criminals. Let's both do better, for everyone's sake." With that, Jonas Cooper walked away, carrying both relief and a sober realization that digital privacy was more fragile than he'd imagined. The next morning, he reset his Wi-Fi passwords again and updated his security protocols, determined to prevent any future prying eyes from invading his home. Outside, Arbor Heights carried on as usual, the everyday bustle returning. Yet the entire neighborhood felt the echoes of one teen's ill-advised curiosity, and one neighbor's misguided assumptions, a reminder that technology, for all its benefits, demanded vigilance, empathy, and caution. 2 days had passed since the chaotic afternoon when Marcus Green was arrested for hacking into neighbors' Wi-Fi networks. For Jonas Cooper, the shock had yet to settle. He found himself replaying the sequence of events in his mind: the moment he discovered an unknown device on his router, Bethany Green's suspicious gaze, the police arriving at his doorstep, and ultimately uncovering that Marcus, Bethany's own nephew, was responsible for spying on them all. In the immediate aftermath, the neighborhood in Arbor Heights felt oddly subdued. The local rumor mill churned with stories about how a teenager had broken into everyone's privacy, fueling both concern and curiosity. Even so, daily life resumed, mail was delivered, garbage trucks rumbled by, and neighbors carried on with their routines. Jonas tried to do the same, yet a lingering sense of vulnerability nagged at him. Each time he logged into his banking app or typed in a password, he hesitated, wondering if another prying eye was lurking somewhere in cyberspace. The tension between Jonas and Bethany had become the talk of the block. Some residents felt Bethany had overreacted in calling the police on Jonas without evidence, others believed she was merely protecting the neighborhood. Jonas harbored no ill will at this point. He recognized that Bethany, for all her flaws, genuinely thought she was acting in Arbor Heights' best interest. Still, the wedge in their relationship was palpable. Whenever they crossed paths, she appeared apologetic, but they exchanged only brief pleasantries. Marcus, meanwhile, remained in custody for questioning. Local law enforcement, in conjunction with a state cybercrimes unit, was investigating the extent of his infiltration. Rumors suggested he'd accessed not only Wi-Fi networks but also home security feeds. While it was still being called a prank, the seriousness of unlawful surveillance loomed large. The authorities also wanted to ensure no additional accomplices or bigger threats were involved. Jonas had resecured his home network with robust new protocols. He upgraded to a modern mesh router system, set up intrusion detection logs, and subscribed to a service that alerted him to any suspicious device on his network. Although that gave him peace of mind, he felt a pang of sadness that it required such measures. He missed the simpler time when he could trust that his quiet street was free of such complexities. On a mild Tuesday morning, Jonas decided to walk to the local cafe for a break from his swirling thoughts. The sidewalk was dotted with blooming flowers, a testament to Arbor Heights' gentle climate. He barely made it a block before spotting Bethany Green, who seemed to be waiting by her mailbox. Her posture was stiff, as if she'd planted herself there specifically to catch him passing by. "Jonas," she called hesitantly, stepping forward. I was hoping we could talk." Jonas slowed his pace. Though he had no desire to dwell on the fiasco, he recognized that an honest conversation might help them both move on. "Sure, Ms. Green," he replied, forcing a small smile. "What's on your mind?" She fidgeted with the mail in her hands, eyes darting nervously. I want to truly apologize for what happened. I should have come to you first instead of jumping to conclusions. You know, calling 911 was. I was just so worried about suspicious activity that I panicked. Jonas nodded, measuring his words. I understand you were worried, but I wish you had asked me. It caused a lot of stress, for both of us. And it didn't prevent the real culprit from doing damage. Bethany swallowed, tears threatening to well in her eyes. I feel terrible about Marcus. He's a good kid, or at least I thought so. I had no idea he had the know-how to break into networks, let alone that he'd use it to spy on people. This has turned into a legal nightmare for our family. A stirring of empathy surfaced in Jonas. He remembered how petrified Marcus had appeared when the police confronted him. Is there any update on him? Bethany sighed. They're arranging a hearing. There may be a chance he'll avoid a heavy sentence since he's young and it's his first offense. But it's up to the judge. He admitted wrongdoing, so that might help, but the charges are still quite serious. Jonas pressed his lips together thoughtfully. He could see that Bethany was genuinely remorseful, not only for her nephew but for how she'd treated Jonas. A quiet part of him even felt sorry for the both of them. I don't hold a grudge against him, Jonas offered gently. He made a huge mistake, but maybe this can be a wake-up call. Bethany's shoulders relaxed, relief flickering in her eyes. Thank you, Jonas. That means more than you know. She hesitated. I'd like to find a way to set things right, to do something for the neighborhood. So we can all feel safer, maybe. Without accusing each other so fast. Jonas allowed a small smile. That's not a bad idea. The following week, at Bethany's suggestion, a neighborhood meeting was arranged at the local community center. The aim was to discuss improving cybersecurity and overall trust among residents. Word spread quickly, many in Arbor Heights, having heard about Marcus's hacking spree, were eager to learn how to protect themselves from similar intrusions. Jonas arrived early, stepping into a modest multipurpose room with foldable chairs arranged in rows. At the front, a table with laptops and pamphlets labeled Internet Safety for Households stood as a makeshift stage. Bethany was already there, greeting attendees with a humble expression. Officers Patel and Quinn, who had responded to Jonas's home the day he changed his Wi-Fi password, attended in uniform, prepared to offer advice from a law enforcement perspective. Once the chairs filled, Bethany opened the meeting with a shaky, heartfelt statement. Thank you all for coming. I know many of you heard about the incident with my nephew, Marcus. He's facing the consequences of what he did, but it shook me to realize how unprepared we are as a neighborhood. I also realize I wrongly accused Jonas Cooper of wrongdoing. I hope we can learn from this so it never happens again. Jonas, seated near the front, appreciated her candidness. After she finished, the police officers explained basic home network security, how to set unique passwords, enable encryption, and watch for suspicious devices. They stressed the importance of communicating with neighbors before leaping to conclusions. If you see something unusual, Officer Patel emphasized, it's best to approach your neighbor politely, ask if everything's okay, or consult a neighborhood watch group. Jumping straight to emergency calls can cause confusion, sometimes it's valid, sometimes not. Sensing an opportunity, Jonas raised his hand. I was the one who discovered the unauthorized device on my router. I changed my password, which might have looked odd to Ms. Green. Let's be sure we talk to each other if we see anything. Otherwise, we risk fueling misunderstandings. Heads nodded, and a few folks murmured agreement. Another neighbor stood up, complaining about how her Ring doorbell had acted odd for weeks, though she never suspected hacking. That prompted a short demonstration by Officer Quinn, who showed how a basic software update could patch vulnerabilities in such devices. Jonas found himself silently marveling at how quickly his personal fiasco had become a catalyst for broader digital awareness in Arbor Heights. Toward the end of the meeting, a man named Curtis Hall, known for his outspoken opinions, stepped forward. All this talk about empathy and understanding is good in theory, he began, but what about real criminals? If we always try to be nice, don't we risk letting actual threats slip by? A ripple of discomfort spread through the room. Jonas felt a tightness in his chest, recalling how quickly he had been labeled suspicious. Before the tension could escalate, Bethany responded, "I get your concern. But I learned the hard way that if you jump to calling the police without facts, you can disrupt innocent lives. We're not saying, ignore wrongdoing, we're saying, verify before you vilify." Officer Patel added, "In law enforcement, we rely on the public to report genuinely suspicious activity. But we also encourage verifying details when possible. Neighbors can talk to each other, cross-check, maybe even ask a block watch leader for advice. That way, real threats don't slip by, and innocent people aren't harassed." Satisfied by the explanation, Curtis shrugged and sat down. The room's tension eased. Jonas caught Bethany's eye, and she gave him a small nod of solidarity. This was the kind of balanced approach the neighborhood needed, cautious vigilance tempered by respect and facts. After the meeting, Jonas lingered, wanting to thank Bethany for organizing it. As the crowd filtered out, she approached him, face etched with fresh worry. "Jonas, I just got word from my sister. The hearing for Marcus is next week. They might offer him a plea deal if he agrees to community service and completes an extensive cybersecurity program." Jonas offered a sympathetic nod. "That's probably best for everyone. It'll keep him from having a permanent record, right?" Bethany nodded, relief mixing with lingering concern. "I hope so. The lawyer said that if any victims want to write a statement, it could help show the judge that people want him rehabilitated, not destroyed. I wanted to ask if you'd be willing to do that. But I understand if you'd rather not." He paused, considering the request. Though Marcus had severely violated his privacy and caused him grief, Jonas saw the bigger picture. A 17-year-old messing around with hacking tools might be ignorant of the consequences. If given the chance to atone and learn, maybe he'd find a more positive path. "I'll do it," Jonas said, surprising even himself with his calm certainty. "I'll write a statement emphasizing that I don't want him locked away, just that he needs to learn and never repeat such invasions." Tears pooled in Bethany's eyes. She clasped his hand in gratitude. "You don't know how much that means to me. Thank you. I'll never forget your kindness." Over the next few days, Jonas composed his statement carefully, describing the emotional toll of discovering someone lurking on his network, but also underscoring his belief that Marcus could be reformed if properly guided. He kept it factual, avoiding too many dramatics. The day before the hearing, Bethany knocked on his door wearing a subdued smile. She read his statement, nodding. "This is perfect," she murmured. "Marcus is lucky you're so understanding." Jonas exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. A part of him still felt raw about the invasion of his privacy, but he couldn't deny that championing empathy aligned better with who he wanted to be. If the Anderson fiasco taught him anything, it was that grace and second chances could reshape a person's life, for the better. That evening, Jonas double-checked his router logs out of habit, scanning for anomalies. No suspicious devices. A wave of relief coursed through him. He'd moved beyond living in fear that every unknown glitch signaled a new intruder. He'd also begun investigating a part-time cybersecurity course. "If I can't chase out these ghosts," he told a friend, "maybe I can arm myself with knowledge to keep them at bay." The day of Marcus Green's court hearing arrived. The wooden benches of the small county courtroom held a handful of people, Bethany Green, Jonas, Officer Patel, and a scattering of other concerned neighbors. Marcus, dressed in a slightly oversized suit that accentuated his youth, stood beside his attorney, eyes downcast. The judge, a stern-faced woman with reading glasses perched low on her nose, glanced over the official documents detailing unauthorized access and unlawful surveillance charges. Bethany swallowed hard, her hands twisting anxiously in her lap. Jonas stepped forward when the judge invited statements from the victims. He felt his pulse thrum as he read from the short letter he'd prepared. He began by detailing how disconcerting it was to discover an unknown device on his router. He spoke of the stress it caused, how trust in one's own home can be shattered in an instant. Yet, he concluded with a plea for leniency, referencing the positive changes that could arise if Marcus was rehabilitated rather than punished harshly. "He's young, he has his whole life ahead of him," Jonas read, voice steady. "I believe with education and community service, he can learn from this, ensuring no one else's privacy is violated again." After he finished, murmurs rippled among the small crowd. Even the judge seemed moved by Jonas's balanced stance. Officer Patel stepped up next, giving a factual account of the investigation's findings. She echoed Jonas's sentiment that while the actions were serious, Marcus's case might be best served by a structured program that harnessed his hacking aptitude for good. Marcus's attorney then presented the proposed plea agreement, a probationary period, mandatory cybersecurity education, supervised community service assisting older residents set up secure Wi-Fi, plus a requirement to apologize to every victim. Marcus, voice trembling, apologized in open court, specifically thanking Jonas for not demanding harsh retribution. "I was foolish," he said. "I didn't realize how much harm I was causing. I never intended to ruin people's sense of safety." The judge scrutinized Marcus for a long, silent moment. Then, in a clear, measured tone, she handed down her ruling, acceptance of the plea deal. The entire hearing lasted under an hour, but it felt monumental. Marcus was escorted from the courtroom, tears brimming in his eyes, tears Jonas interpreted as relief and regret. Bethany, too, wiped away tears, grateful her nephew avoided a crushing sentence. Outside the courthouse, Jonas found himself standing beside Bethany and a newly freed Marcus, who was awaiting paperwork from his attorney. The teen managed a shaky smile, shyly meeting Jonas's gaze. "I know words can't fix what I did," Marcus said softly, "but I really am sorry." Jonas placed a hand on the younger man's shoulder. "You've got your second chance now. Make the most of it. And if you ever want to use your skills in a positive way, let me know. I'm learning some cybersecurity basics myself. Maybe we can compare notes." Marcus nodded, both startled and appreciative of Jonas's openness. Bethany, tears shimmering again, looked from her nephew to Jonas. "Thank you," she repeated for what felt like the 100th time, voice brimming with gratitude. Over the coming weeks, Marcus began serving his community service hours, ironically setting up stronger Wi-Fi security for elderly residents. The same neighbors who once buzzed with fear over hackers now found themselves guided by the very culprit who'd rattled them. The arrangement was awkward at first, but gradually beneficial. By explaining to them how easily he'd infiltrated networks, Marcus helped them understand the vulnerabilities that plague modern households. They, in turn, recognized that knowledge, guided responsibly, could protect the entire neighborhood. Meanwhile, Jonas carried on with his life. He took a short cybersecurity course at the local college, discovering a newfound passion. He found it oddly satisfying to decode the complexities of routers and encryption. Bethany reached out to him more often, no longer fueled by suspicion, but by genuine friendship and occasional neighborly chats. "It's strange," she told Jonas one evening, "how a crisis can bring people together, if we let it." Jonas agreed wholeheartedly, reflecting on how the fiasco had begun with him feeling singled out and spied upon, and ended with him forging deeper community ties. He even partnered with the local homeowners association to organize monthly, digital safety workshops. Officer Patel frequently joined as a guest speaker, reinforcing the message that collaboration and empathy, not knee-jerk panic, safeguarded neighborhoods from both real criminals and unwarranted paranoia. By the time the leaves began to change color, the memory of Jonas's unexpected confrontation with the police and Bethany's frantic 911 call had receded to a subdued neighborhood anecdote. The story occasionally resurfaced among new arrivals who asked, "Is it true someone's nephew hacked everyone's cameras?" It was retold as a cautionary tale about both cybersecurity and the perils of jumping to conclusions. Marcus, having completed his probation and community service, showed remarkable progress. He visited Jonas once a week, no longer sneaking around with malicious intent, but openly discussing ways to develop ethical hacking skills. The local library sponsored small cybersecurity classes, and Marcus was soon recognized as a bright student. Jonas marveled at the transformation. The same skills that had once threatened people's privacy now had the potential to protect them. Bethany, for her part, never stopped apologizing. Though Jonas assured her he'd moved past it, she insisted on inviting him over for dinner occasionally, offering homemade meals as a token of her remorse. He usually accepted with a warm grin. Despite the rocky start to their neighborly relationship, they discovered they had more in common than they realized, enjoying gardening, local hiking trails, and a shared love of mystery novels. "If only I had known you were normal," Bethany joked once, rolling her eyes at the memory of her unfounded fears. Jonas chuckled, not letting the statement bother him, content in the knowledge that their mutual respect had replaced suspicion. Late one evening, Jonas sat in his living room, scanning his updated router logs out of habit. As expected, nothing looked out of the ordinary. He paused to reflect on how a single device's presence on his network had catapulted him into a swirling saga of distrust, high-stakes hacking, and ultimate reconciliation. Despite the chaos, he felt oddly thankful for it, thankful that it taught him about community, humility, and the power of empathy. He typed a short message to the newly formed Arbor Heights Digital Safety Group, a neighborhood chat he'd set up with Marissa's help. "Remember to rotate your passwords monthly and check for unknown devices. Shout if you need help." He hit send with a contented smile. At that exact moment, a text notification pinged his phone. It was from Bethany, reading, "Jonas, I'm planting new flowers out front tomorrow, maybe you can come help. By the way, thanks again for everything." He chuckled softly, typing a quick affirmative reply. The subtle transformation from adversaries to neighbors, perhaps even friends, reassured him that fear could yield to understanding when approached with patience. As he set his phone aside, Jonas realized that a new day was dawning for Arbor Heights, one in which technology, once a wedge of paranoia, could become a bridge that connected them in ways they never expected. A few months after the resolution of Marcus Green's hacking case, Arbor Heights felt like a neighborhood on the mend. Word had spread about the collaborative measures neighbors took to strengthen home network security. Residents compared notes, updated routers, and even replaced old doorbell cameras prone to vulnerability. The tension that once overshadowed Jonas Cooper's interactions with Bethany Green dissolved into an unexpected camaraderie. The story of how they'd clashed, he, the wrongly accused, and she, the overzealous neighbor, became a cautionary parable told over community barbecues and weekend block gatherings. In her typical fashion, Bethany spearheaded a new, neighbors-aware, group that met bi-weekly at the local community center. The group aimed to address not just digital concerns but also ways to maintain a safer, more harmonious environment. Despite skepticism from some longtime residents, the meetings drew decent attendance, proving that the fiasco had awakened a thirst for communal action. Marcus Green, released under probation and enrolled in a cybersecurity mentorship program, occasionally assisted in these gatherings, advising neighbors on how to avoid repeating his pranks gone wrong. Over time, the boy's embarrassment transformed into constructive energy. He recognized how his advanced tech savvy could be repurposed for good, leading him to dream of becoming a cybersecurity consultant someday. Meanwhile, Jonas found himself in an unexpected leadership role. The local homeowners association approached him to coordinate digital security sessions. Unsure at first, Jonas realized he had inadvertently become an informal face of personal network safety in Arbor Heights. He accepted, determined to ensure that no one else felt the same confusion and fear he did when he first discovered the unknown device on his router. As spring approached, Bethany proposed an idea for a neighborhood renewal festival, combining a food fair with workshops on digital safety, home improvement, and general neighborly engagement. The festival would be a day-long affair, with local vendors, crafts, and short presentations. She pitched the concept to Jonas and a small planning committee at the community center one afternoon. "I want this to be more than just a carnival," Bethany explained, flipping through pages of rough sketches and flyers. "I envision booths about everything from gardening to online security. Let's bring positivity to Arbor Heights after all the drama we've been through." Jonas nodded, scanning her outlines. "It sounds ambitious but wonderful. Let's see, morning session on router basics. Maybe a noon demonstration on how to set up safe camera systems." A wide grin spread across Bethany's face. "Exactly. We'll also have a local bakery selling pastries, and a few folks from the garden club offering tips. This can unify all sorts of interests." Show that we've moved forward as a community. The more Jonas listened, the more he believed in the festival's potential. Since the hacking episode and the subsequent meltdown, Arbor Heights had made remarkable strides in bridging misunderstandings. Maybe this festival could be a final stamp of solidarity. Planning advanced smoothly. Flyers were printed, volunteers signed up, and local shops donated items for raffle prizes. But as the festival date drew near, the old rumor mill in the neighborhood churned again. Some residents, including a few older couples, voiced distrust. "Sure, we all act friendly now," one longtime resident, Mr. Griswold, muttered at a planning meeting, "but what if there are more Marcus Green types out there? Suppose some new arrival is also poking around our Wi-Fi?" Jonas recognized the sentiment. Fear of hidden threats can linger, especially once a community has been burned. Attempting to calm tensions, Jonas proposed hosting a short, plain-spoken talk titled Cybersecurity 101, aimed at addressing basic anxieties. He volunteered to present it, with Marcus offering demonstrations. "If we confront these worries head-on, maybe folks won't resort to calling 911 over a neighbor with a screwdriver," Jonas quipped gently, eyeing Bethany, who managed a sheepish smile. Nevertheless, undercurrents of suspicion threatened to overshadow the festival. Rumors emerged about a possible protest from a group of residents who believed Celestial Air's fiasco, some confusion referencing a plain story, ironically a rumor from another user, "Let's ignore," was overshadowing the real issues. Jonas suspected these naysayers were more upset about change than any specific problem. The big day arrived under clear skies. Rows of pop-up tents dotted the local park, each with colorful banners. By 8 a.m., vendors were already preparing their wares. The sweet aroma of baked goods mingled with the earthy scent of freshly potted plants from the garden club's display. A small stage, set up near the playground, would host short lectures throughout the day. Jonas, wearing a simple volunteer t-shirt and a name tag reading Digital Safety Coordinator, arrived early with Bethany, helping finalize booth placements. Marissa and Gwyn, along with Officers Patel and Quinn, assisted with setting up a dedicated Ask a Cop stand focusing on responsible ways to report suspicious activity. They'd stacked brochures about the difference between an actual emergency and a scenario best handled by conversation or the local watch group. At 9 a.m., families trickled in. Children dashed toward the playground, while parents explored the stands. A half-hour later, the festival was in full swing, lively music playing from a small sound system. The sunshine and gentle breeze lent a festive air, giving Arbor Heights a communal sense of renewal. Jonas couldn't help but smile at how seamlessly an event born from conflict had blossomed into something so joyful. At midday, an announcer called for attendees to gather at the stage for the Cybersecurity 101 demo. Jonas stepped onto the platform, scanning the crowd. He spotted neighbors who used to eye each other with suspicion now chatting amicably. This felt like a genuine turning point. Next to him, Marcus Green, a bit nervous, booted up a laptop connected to a large screen. The teen had progressed significantly since his arrest, channeling his knowledge into constructive endeavors rather than pranks. "Good afternoon, everyone," Jonas began, voice steady. "I'm Jonas Cooper, and I'm here with Marcus Green. We'll show you how easy it is to inadvertently leave your home network open, and how just as easily you can secure it." Marcus typed a few commands on his laptop, pulling up a sample demonstration. A feed displayed a mock router login screen. "Most people never change the default password on devices," Marcus explained, speaking more confidently than he used to. "That's how I got in. I used publicly known defaults. So if you're watching this and your device's password is still admin or 1234, well, let me tell you, it's basically an open door." A ripple of uneasy laughter crossed the crowd. Jonas chimed in, "But solutions are straightforward. Create strong passphrase, keep software updated, and watch for unknown devices. If you see anything suspicious, talk to your neighbor first. Communication is crucial." He shot Bethany a meaningful grin from the stage, and she waved back, acknowledging the lesson learned. They spent the next 20 minutes fielding questions. Some expressed fear about dark web criminals, while others worried about Ring doorbells being compromised. Marcus calmly offered answers, referencing official guidelines from the cybersecurity program he'd been attending. To Jonas's relief, the crowd seemed far more receptive than suspicious. Right as Jonas wound down his talk, a voice from the back of the audience shouted, "What about real criminals, though? You keep telling us to chat with neighbors, but what if our neighbor is malicious?" Heads turned to see Mr. Griswold again, his arms folded, brow furrowed with skepticism. Jonas paused, exchanging glances with Marcus. This was reminiscent of the tension that flared up in earlier community meetings. "Sir," Jonas began gently, "we can't guarantee everyone's good intentions. But we can be balanced. We stay cautious, check facts, and yes, talk to neighbors. If we suspect actual danger, we contact authorities. The point is not to assume guilt based on incomplete evidence." Grumbling, Mr. Griswold took a seat. Officer Patel stepped forward to back Jonas up. "Every situation differs," she said. "But unsubstantiated fear can be as harmful as ignoring a real crime. Our job is to help you distinguish between those scenarios." The tension eased, though the conversation left a slight heaviness. Jonas suspected some people would always cling to suspicion, but if the majority embraced a more empathetic approach, Arbor Heights could find a healthier balance. After the demonstration, the festival continued with music, food stalls, and children's activities. Jonas roamed the park, occasionally stopping to greet acquaintances. He found Bethany near a table hosting a raffle for a brand new router set, courtesy of a local electronics store. She was enthusiastically explaining how the device included advanced encryption to a curious elderly couple. "Jonas, perfect timing," Bethany called, beckoning him over. "This nice couple is considering upgrading, but they're worried it's complicated. Show them the basics." He obliged, patiently describing the setup process, encouraging them that if they ever felt stuck, a neighbor or one of the new digital safety volunteers could help. The elderly couple thanked him profusely, promising to come to the next session Jonas hosted. Throughout the afternoon, these small interactions repeated, a fought-huncher how to protect gaming accounts, a single mother anxious about her cameras. Jonas stepped in where needed, offering guidance without sounding condescending. Observing all this, Bethany's earlier guilt seemed overshadowed by satisfaction. Her plan for a festival not just to celebrate but to educate was working beautifully. As the sun dipped lower, a quiet lull settled over the festival. Jonas took a moment to sip lemonade under a canopy. A nudge from Marissa pulled him from his reverie. "Jonas," she whispered, "someone's at the info booth asking for you. Says he's from out of town but read about your story online." Curiosity piqued, Jonas excused himself. Walking to the info booth, he found a young man, maybe early 20s, sporting a discreet backpack and an anxious smile. He introduced himself as Alan Perez, a cybersecurity student from a nearby city. "I heard about your neighborhood's transformation, how you overcame that hacking scandal and, instead of alienating the culprit, embraced a community approach. It's inspiring." Alan explained how he'd researched local news articles about Marcus's arrest. Fascinated by the concept of empathy-driven solutions, Alan asked if Jonas would share the approach for a project he was working on at his college. Surprised but flattered, Jonas outlined the steps, how an initial fiasco sparked open dialogues, digital training, and a new culture of verifying facts. Alan listened intently, scribbling notes. Eventually, Alan said, "I'm hoping to present a case study on how neighborhoods can handle these conflicts. It's a stark contrast to how many places respond with immediate hostility and lawsuits." Jonas offered a wry grin. "I'm proud of what we've built, but it didn't come without mistakes. Keep that in your case study, nobody's perfect. We tripped up, we learned, we moved forward." Satisfied, Alan thanked Jonas, promising to keep in touch. This chance encounter felt like an affirmation that Arbor Heights' experience could ripple outward, helping others handle digital infringements with a balance of caution and compassion. As dusk approached, the festival wound down. People packed up booths, collecting leftover pamphlets and disassembling canopies. Jonas collapsed onto a folding chair, exhausted but content. Near the park's exit, he saw Marcus Green assisting an elderly neighbor in carrying a new router, another sign of the ongoing transformation. Bethany wandered over, arms hugging her sides as if bracing against the chilly breeze. "We did it," she murmured, eyes scanning the now quiet field. "Months ago, we were at each other's throats. Now, look around, everyone's talking about solutions, not just problems." Jonas nodded, a faint smile lighting his features. "I never would have guessed a fiasco about Wi-Fi would end up forging better connections than we had before." Bethany's gaze softened. "I appreciate you not holding my rash actions against me. This festival is exactly what Arbor Heights needed. I guess, in a twisted way, we owe that to Marcus's mistake, pushed us to face the flaws in our assumptions." "I can see the irony," Jonas chuckled. "But it also owes a lot to your determination to fix things. And, well, I guess my small role in not letting anger consume me." She agreed wholeheartedly. "You're one of the kindest souls I've met, Jonas. Thanks for giving me the benefit of the doubt when I didn't deserve it." He waved off the praise. "We're neighbors. That's how it should be." That night, Jonas returned home, physically drained yet invigorated by the success of the festival. Slipping inside, he locked the door with an unaccustomed calm. His router blinked from a corner table, no longer a source of paranoia, but a reminder of how technology, properly handled, could unify rather than divide. Toggling on his laptop, he checked the community's new group chat. Messages popped up: "Great festival, thanks for the tips, Jonas, I updated my cameras, feels safer now." The outpouring of positivity made him grin. A year ago, such camaraderie felt unimaginable. Glancing at the window, Jonas noticed the faint glow of Bethany's porch light across the street. Where once she might have watched him with suspicion, now he felt only gratitude and friendship emanating from that home. The fiasco that started with a single, mysterious device on his Wi-Fi had blossomed into a transformation for both of them, and for Arbor Heights. His phone buzzed, a text from Marcus, reading, "Thanks again for everything. I'm volunteering at the library's tech workshop next week, hope to see you there." Jonas typed a quick, encouraging response. Life had indeed come full circle. The meddling teen who once infiltrated his network was now using those same skills to uplift others, just as Jonas had hoped. Switching off the lights, Jonas prepared for bed. Exhaustion tugged at his limbs, but his mind brimmed with hope. No matter the obstacles tomorrow might bring, the community had discovered a blueprint for resilience. Empathy, openness, verifying facts, these small but crucial steps had carried them through. And as Jonas settled under the covers, he allowed himself a contented sigh. In a world fraught with suspicion, this little corner of Arbor Heights stood determined to choose understanding over fear, forging stronger bonds than ever before. Months after the memorable neighborhood renewal festival, Arbor Heights was hardly recognizable from the tense community it once was. What started as a fiasco about stolen Wi-Fi and misguided suspicions had morphed into a deeper bond among residents, who found themselves increasingly proactive about both digital security and neighborly connection. Jonas Cooper, once known primarily as "that poor guy Bethany Green called the cops on," had turned into something of a local advocate for calm, rational approaches to conflict. He frequently collaborated with Bethany to host monthly meetups on technology and community health, encouraging open dialogue rather than knee-jerk suspicion. Standing side by side, Jonas and Bethany made an unlikely but dynamic team. She brought her organizational zeal, if at times a bit overbearing, and he offered practical knowledge about routers, online privacy, and bridging communication gaps. Meanwhile, Marcus Green, Bethany's nephew, continued to fulfill his probationary requirements with surprising dedication. His mandated community service initially felt humiliating, but once he realized how many neighbors genuinely needed help locking down their networks, he embraced the role. It also didn't hurt that he had grown to respect Jonas as an unexpected mentor, someone who had every right to hold a grudge but instead chose to guide him. This sense of redemption fueled Marcus, driving him to enroll in online cybersecurity courses that aligned with his newfound sense of purpose. The police presence, embodied by Officers Patel and Quinn, also seemed more integrated into the local scene than ever before. They dropped by the monthly gatherings, sometimes offering short seminars on basic legal knowledge, how to recognize real threats versus personal biases, when to call 911, and which resources existed for unresolved neighbor disputes. Over time, even longtime skeptics like Mr. Griswold tempered their attitudes, seeing that proactive engagement and a willingness to ask clarifying questions worked better than harboring suspicion. In short, Arbor Heights had become a testament to how adversity could spur growth if a community leaned into empathy rather than fear. However, as Jonas and Bethany were about to discover, progress rarely unfolds without new challenges, and a fresh series of events threatened to test everything they had built thus far. One bright Saturday morning, Jonas was pruning the small flower bed in front of his home, a newly acquired hobby inspired by the sense of pride he felt in making Arbor Heights an even more welcoming place. He heard footsteps approaching and looked up to find Bethany Green, stepping carefully across the lawn. "Morning, Jonas," she said with a friendly nod, hugging a small notebook to her chest. "Busy with the garden, I see. It looks lovely." "Thanks," Jonas replied, wiping a bead of sweat from his forehead. "We're all picking up new skills since we stopped fighting over Wi-Fi, huh?" Bethany let out a soft laugh. "You have no idea. I'm trying my hand at crocheting now, but let's just say the results are questionable." They shared a brief exchange of pleasantries before Bethany's expression turned more serious. "By the way, I heard a rumor from the city planning board. Word is some big developer is eyeing sections of Arbor Heights for commercial projects. I'm not sure if they plan to rezone or just buy up property, but people are whispering that it could affect us all." Jonas paused, clippers in hand. Arbor Heights was predominantly a residential area with a quaint charm. The notion of large commercial blocks seemed alien and potentially disruptive. "Do we have any official statements? Or just speculation?" "Just speculation so far," Bethany admitted. "But with everything we've overcome, I don't want us blindsided by another wave of tension. Especially one that could tear down homes or displace families." Jonas thought back to how the neighborhood had banded together recently. If anything threatened that new unity, it was the introduction of a high-stakes commercial interest that could pit neighbor against neighbor for property deals. "We should maybe gather more info, see if the rumor has legs, and if so, approach the city with our concerns or questions." Bethany nodded resolutely. "Agreed. Let's keep each other informed." Later that day, Jonas headed to the local library to meet Marcus, who had invited him to see a fledgling project he was coordinating, a digital awareness kiosk. The library entrance bustled with families, students, and seniors. Among the racks of books, Jonas spotted Marcus fiddling with a small interactive touchscreen stand near the library's tech corner. "Hey, Jonas." Marcus greeted, looking up with an enthusiastic grin. "Check this out. I convinced the library board to let me set up a kiosk for passers-by to quickly learn about strong passwords, safe browsing tips, and even a feature that helps them check if their email accounts have been part of a data breach. All basic stuff, but it's a start." Jonas examined the screen. It had user-friendly graphics with bullet points about never reusing passwords, verifying suspicious links, and other essential tips. "This is impressive," Jonas said. "I remember not too long ago, you used your knowledge for, well, less noble pursuits." Marcus's cheeks flushed slightly. "Yeah, I regret that every day. But I'm determined to use my skills for something positive now. The community service hours might be over, but I want to keep giving back." Tapping the kiosk's interface, Jonas saw short video tutorials, some recorded by Marcus himself, explaining how to set up a WPA3 router. Another module offered a "Test Your Knowledge" quiz on spotting phishing emails. "This is fantastic. You might have found your calling," Jonas commented. Marcus smiled sheepishly. "It feels good to help. The librarians are supportive, too." Then his smile wavered. "But I've heard the rumors about a big developer maybe swooping into Arbor Heights. It scares me that everything we've built here, our sense of community, could unravel if property values spike or if homes get torn down for malls. If that rumor is true, how do we keep the neighborhood together?" Jonas sighed, patting Marcus on the back. "I don't know yet, but we'll face it the same way we faced the hacking fiasco, by communicating, verifying facts, and standing united if we must. Rumors about the developer's interest began to solidify when a notice appeared on the bulletin board outside City Hall: public hearing regarding proposed rezoning in Arbor Heights, next Tuesday at 7 p.m. The official text described a plan for mixed-use commercial development, though details were sparse. Instantly, tension rippled through the neighborhood. Some saw it as an opportunity, maybe new jobs or convenient shops. Others feared displacement or a spike in rents. Bethany, Jonas, and a few others formed a small group to prepare for the hearing. They gathered one evening in Bethany's living room, a space that, ironically, had once felt hostile to Jonas but now felt welcoming. Over cups of herbal tea, they strategized. "Our best bet is to attend that meeting fully informed," Jonas said. "We should read the existing zoning laws, talk to the city planner if possible, and gather data about how similar developments impacted other neighborhoods." Bethany nodded. "I'll handle the city planner angle. My cousin works in the mayor's office. Maybe I can get a few pointers." Officer Patel and Officer Quinn wouldn't be directly involved in a zoning debate, but they offered background on typical concerns: traffic congestion, public safety, and how commercial expansions can drive a wedge between neighbors if property disputes arise. They reminded everyone to remain calm and approach city officials politely. Marissa and Gwyn joined them, volunteering to coordinate a town hall Q&A for neighbors prior to the official hearing. "Better we unify our voice and questions," she explained. "We don't want 100 random, angry rants. If we go in with a structured approach, city officials might take us more seriously." Marcus listened quietly, chewing on a pencil. "You know, if the developer invests in better infrastructure, could that help with updated broadband lines? Might be a silver lining." The group appreciated his optimism, but Jonas cautioned, "That's possible, but let's not jump to that conclusion without seeing the developer's actual plan." By the night's end, they had a plan: gather facts, invite neighbors to a preliminary discussion, and collectively decide on a stance. If the development threatened displacing families or overshadowing the community's unity, they'd push back. If it offered real benefits without harming residential life, they'd keep open minds. That weekend, the Arbor Heights pre-hearing assembly took place at the same community center where they'd once held the cybersecurity workshops. The atmosphere was charged with curiosity and a hint of anxiety. Residents trickled in, some open-minded, others harboring deep suspicion about big commercial changes. Jonas and Bethany stood at a makeshift podium, calling the assembly to order. Jonas cleared his throat, scanning the crowd. "Thank you all for coming. We want to ensure that next Tuesday's public hearing is productive, not chaotic. We've compiled what we know about the proposed rezoning." Bethany laid out a large map pinned to a corkboard, highlighting the edges of Arbor Heights. She'd drawn circles around certain blocks rumored to be rezoned. "It appears the developer, Holtman Enterprises, wants to build a small shopping plaza, potentially with offices above. But the scope might expand. We don't have clarity if residential properties near that zone could be bought out." A wave of murmurs rose, particularly from a row of older homeowners who lived near the identified blocks. One elderly woman exclaimed, "I don't want to lose my home of 40 years. If they come with big money, can they force me out?" Marissa stepped in. "Legally, they can't force you to sell unless the city uses eminent domain for public projects. A private commercial development typically can't just displace you. But they might pressure neighbors or offer buyouts. People often feel compelled to move if property taxes rise or if the surroundings drastically change." Concerned voices overlapped. Jonas raised a hand to calm them. "Remember, we don't have the developer's full plan yet. The city hearing is our chance to demand details. If we show up united, we can ensure our values, community, neighborly trust, aren't trampled." Bethany added, "Let's also remain respectful. The city council might genuinely see benefits in partial development. We can't just shout them down. Instead, let's question them thoroughly. If it's not beneficial to our neighborhood, we'll make that clear." Marcus offered a hesitant wave from the side. "I heard from a friend that Holtman has projects in other cities. Some are quite successful but also overshadow local character. Maybe we can find people from those communities to share their experiences before we finalize how we approach this. The group nodded thoughtfully, deciding to investigate. The meeting concluded with the promise to gather more data, unify concerns into a cohesive set of questions, and approach the hearing with a balanced mindset. Over the next few days, Jonas and Bethany dove into research about Holtman Enterprises. They discovered that in two neighboring towns, Riverford and Maple Glen, Holtman had built similar, mixed-use, developments. Opinions from those towns were mixed. Some praised the convenience of new shops and modern architecture, while others bemoaned traffic congestion, lost local charm, and rising rents that drove out older residents. Maple Glen, in particular, faced tension when certain longtime store owners couldn't compete with the chain retailers moving in. Jonas spent an evening reading Maple Glen's local newspaper archives, while Bethany called a contact who lived in Riverford. The contact, a woman named Paula, relayed that Holtman starts small but eventually expands, buying additional plots once their initial development is established. If the city or neighbors aren't strict about zoning lines, they creep further in. Paula also noted that Holtman had a slick marketing approach, charity donations to local causes to sweeten public opinion, orchestrating flashy sales pitches in city council. Armed with this knowledge, Jonas grew uneasy. It might not be purely destructive, he told Bethany, but we have to ensure we keep them in check. If we cede too much control, Arbor Heights might be unrecognizable in a few years. Bethany felt a surge of determination, reminiscent of her protective instincts that once led her astray with Jonas. This time, though, she was determined to proceed with facts rather than assumptions. She called up a few neighbors in a rumored rezoning area, encouraging them not to panic but to show up at the hearing. If we stand together, she said, we can demand clarity from Holtman. Maybe we shape the project so it truly benefits us, or we resist if it threatens our homes. Finally, Tuesday evening arrived. The Grand City Council chamber was packed, Arbor Heights residents filled the gallery, the tension palpable. At the front of the room, a panel of council members faced the crowd with an air of official gravity. Representatives of Holtman Enterprises occupied several seats at a table, folders and sleek briefcases indicating a polished presentation to come. Jonas sat in the front row with Bethany, Marissa, and a small committee they'd formed. Marcus hovered near the back, somewhat awed by the formal setting, but determined to see how this process worked. The hearing began with City Council's introduction, followed by Holtman's official pitch. A well-dressed spokesperson strode to the microphone, flipping through slides on a projector. Renderings depicted modern, glass-fronted buildings, streets lined with trees, and a pristine walkway labeled, Proposed Arbor Heights Marketplace. The spokesperson spoke of renewed economic activity and enhanced property values. As Jonas studied the slides, he noticed the planned site encompassed more than just a small corner. One area overlapped with existing homes, albeit not forcibly, but implying owners might be offered buyouts. Tapping Bethany's arm, he whispered, they're indeed aiming big. We need to highlight how this might displace folks or change the area drastically. After Holtman's polished presentation, the council opened the floor to public comments. Residents lined up at a microphone. Some, lured by potential job creation, voiced support. Others worried about noise, traffic, and the future of independent small shops. The atmosphere ebbed between polite curiosity and passionate debate. Then it was Bethany Green's turn. She walked to the mic, hands trembling slightly but posture upright. Good evening, council members. My name is Bethany Green, a resident of Arbor Heights. I appreciate the potential benefits of new development, but we must consider the intangible costs, the disruption of a long-established residential character, the potential buyouts that can pressure families who've lived here for generations. We want clarity on how property owners can remain secure. The council nodded. Next came Jonas, who introduced himself and recounted his personal experience. We're a neighborhood that overcame a cybersecurity incident by pulling together. That sense of unity is precious. If Holtman's plan endangers that by commercial overreach, we have to proceed with caution. Let's see a binding commitment that no homeowner will be forced out, that traffic solutions are in place, and that local businesses won't be overshadowed by chain retailers. Council members scribbled notes. Holtman's spokesperson politely responded with a measured statement: "We certainly want a positive relationship with the community. We're open to community input in shaping final designs. Our intent isn't displacement but revitalization." Jonas caught a subtle shift in the spokesperson's expression. He recognized the practiced rhetoric typical of large corporations wanting to mollify critics. He resolved to press further, ensuring the council and neighbors demanded specifics, not just warm promises. The hearing lasted well into the night. By the end, a motion was agreed upon: Holtman Enterprises must deliver a revised, detailed plan within 60 days, addressing concerns about property lines, traffic, and the local business environment. The city council, seeing the robust turnout from Arbor Heights, recognized they couldn't simply rubber stamp the proposal without risking public backlash. Walking out of City Hall, Jonas and Bethany exhaled in relief. They'd managed to rally enough voices that the developer's progress would be slowed until the plan was hammered out properly. Some neighbors, though still uneasy, expressed satisfaction that at least they weren't blindsided by immediate bulldozers. Officer Patel, who had attended in plain clothes just to observe, patted Jonas on the back. "You two handled that with composure," she said, nodding at Bethany. "It's a testament to the neighborly approach you cultivated." Marissa chimed in. "What's next? We celebrate, or do we get right back to planning for the next city session?" Bethany grinned, though fatigue etched her face. "A bit of both, maybe. We should hold a follow-up meeting to prepare. But first, I could use a good night's sleep and maybe some victory pancakes in the morning." Marcus, who had listened quietly, piped up. "I can help research city codes further. If we pinpoint exact clauses that protect existing homeowners, we can push those in the next hearing." "Sound good?" Jonas offered a thumbs up. "That'd be fantastic. We might also chat with the local business owners to see how they feel. If Holtman tries to woo them with big buyouts or overshadow them, we want to know soon." The group parted ways in a swirl of shared determination, exhausted, but far from beaten. A few weeks later, Holtman's lead representative requested an informal meeting with key neighborhood figures, aiming to show good faith by discussing potential compromises. Jonas, Bethany, Officer Patel, as a neutral observer, and a small cadre of residents attended the get-together at a local cafe. Over coffee, the Holtman rep, Ms. Carly Thompson, displayed updated sketches, scaled-back commercial units, designated residential buffer zones, and mention of community input boards to help shape architectural aesthetics. Jonas found the changes promising but worried it could be superficial PR. "We appreciate your willingness to adapt," Bethany said politely, glancing at Jonas for confirmation. "However, we want these buffer zones to be legally binding. Otherwise, expansions might creep up to people's front porches in a year or two." Ms. Thompson nodded. "Understood. We're drafting something the city can incorporate into a formal development agreement, restricting expansions unless further hearings are held. The last thing we want is a hostile environment." Jonas eyed the rep curiously, unsure if her sincerity was genuine or purely strategic. Nonetheless, it was progress. The meeting concluded with a mutual understanding that Holtman would produce the formal revised plan soon, and the neighborhood would keep an open mind, as long as crucial concerns, like home security, property rights, and minimal displacement, were addressed. By the time summer's warmth embraced Arbor Heights, the tension of a looming commercial takeover had settled into a cautious optimism. Holtman's final plan was still a work in progress, but they had begun publicly acknowledging the importance of not steamrolling existing homeowners. Jonas and Bethany made sure to maintain lines of communication, scheduling a monthly check-in with Ms. Thompson. Meanwhile, life in Arbor Heights continued at its newly elevated level of neighborly interaction. The local library kiosk that Marcus had set up thrived, with daily sign-ups from residents seeking knowledge about online safety. The next wave of block gatherings integrated short Q&A sessions about city developments alongside the usual potluck and camaraderie. The local hardware store even started stocking security cameras with default strong encryption, complete with a cheat sheet on best practices courtesy of Jonas. In all this, Bethany's relationship with Jonas solidified into a genuine friendship. He'd visit her occasionally for coffee, discussing not just local politics but also day-to-day joys like new recipes or the best times to plant certain flowers. Their synergy, once rooted in suspicion and near conflict, had blossomed into a model of how neighbors can grow closer by tackling adversity together. Officer Patel, seeing the fruits of the community's approach, occasionally brought new recruits to Arbor Heights as an example of community policing done right, demonstrating how respectful, fact-based dialogue outshone mere suspicion. Marcus Green, newly recognized in the neighborhood, found part-time work with a local IT firm, grateful for the second chance that Jonas and others had championed. Standing on his front porch one early evening, Jonas surveyed the quiet street. The old him might have wondered if any lurking device still threatened his online privacy. Now, with stronger security measures in place and a well-informed neighborhood, he felt comfortable and safe. The real shift, he realized, was intangible. Arbor Heights had learned how to handle conflict with measured empathy rather than knee-jerk accusation. He flipped through a small binder of notes, the upcoming city council date, details on Holtman's new plan, plus a flyer for another neighborhood workshop. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Jonas allowed himself a contented breath. Sure, challenges remained. Negotiating the final shape of commercial expansion, continuing to guard against potential hackers, but if they faced each issue with the same unity, Arbor Heights would endure and thrive. From behind her fence, Bethany gave a wave, greeting him with a warm, "How's it going?" He smiled, remembering how the same wave months ago triggered his anxiety and suspicion. Now, it symbolized friendship, acceptance, and a readiness to keep forging ahead. In the hush of that twilight, Jonas stood in gratitude for how one unfortunate fiasco had sparked a lasting transformation in a once divided neighborhood. It was the tail end of a warm summer, and Arbor Heights basked in a golden haze of lingering sunlight and lazy afternoons. Children played on newly refurbished sidewalks, while families mingled more openly than anyone could remember. The Wi-Fi hacking fiasco that once nearly tore apart the neighborhood felt like a distant memory, replaced by a cooperative spirit forged in the aftermath of that crisis. Still, despite the improving sense of unity, a subtle tension underscored the community's day-to-day routine. Holtman Enterprises, the major developer seeking to build a commercial complex, had promised revised plans to address local concerns. The city council had delayed a formal vote, giving Holtman 2 months to draft a comprehensive proposal that ensured no forced displacement, minimal traffic overload, and respect for Arbor Heights' character. Residents waited anxiously, uncertain whether Holtman's new blueprint would truly preserve the neighborhood or bring dramatic changes that threatened its calm. Jonas Cooper navigated these changing times with a sense of guarded optimism. After all, if Arbor Heights could overcome a hacking spree and misguided 911 calls, perhaps they could meet the challenge of big business infiltration, too. He just hoped the new sense of communal harmony wouldn't collapse once money and corporate influence came into play. One Saturday afternoon, Jonas was pruning the modest flower bed in front of his cozy single-story home, still enjoying the gardening habit he'd picked up. As he clipped a few stray leaves, a postal worker ambled up the sidewalk, scanning the addresses. The worker handed Jonas a thick envelope with an official seal stamped in the upper corner, Holtman Enterprises. Jonas's brows furrowed. He quickly thanked the postal worker and retreated into his house, curiosity piqued. Inside, he set the envelope on his kitchen table, poured himself a glass of iced tea, and opened it carefully. Out slid multiple pages of glossy printouts and typed text, along with a neatly folded cover letter. Dear Mr. Cooper, we appreciate your participation in previous city hearings and community discussions regarding Holtman's intended development in Arbor Heights. Enclosed is our revised plan, which incorporates feedback from local residents. We hope you'll find these updates address concerns about displacement, traffic, neighborhood aesthetics, and business competition. Jonas flipped through the pages, scanning the bullet points, a smaller commercial footprint than originally proposed. Proposed, green buffer zones, between the new buildings and existing residences. Stipulations about reusing local shops or partnering with them instead of replacing them. At first glance, it looked like Holtman was trying. However, Jonas also spotted worrying vague language about future phases, implying expansions might still loom beyond this initial plan. As he perused, his phone buzzed. Bethany Green's number lit up on the screen. Jonas. Bethany's voice came in a rush. Did you get the package from Holtman? I did, he said, flipping to a page titled Strategic Expansion Potential. It's interesting. Looks better than before, but I'm not entirely convinced. They leave a door open for expansions if certain market conditions are met. Bethany sighed. Exactly. I've got the same letter. The city is scheduling another public forum next week to discuss it. We should gather the usual crew, Marissa, Officers Patel and Quinn, Marcus, and see if we can break this down for the neighborhood. Jonas agreed, feeling the stirrings of a familiar determination. Let's meet tomorrow evening at your place. We'll plan how to respond. By the next day's evening, a small group assembled in Bethany's living room, just as they had for prior crises. Jonas arrived with a notepad and the Holtman documents. Bethany had posted large sticky notes on the wall summarizing key points of the new plan. Marissa and Gwyn sipped coffee and scribbled disclaimers about city regulations. Officer Patel and Officer Quinn joined in plain clothes, looking relaxed yet prepared to advise on the public safety angle. Marcus, wearing a t-shirt that read "Hackers for Good," hovered near a laptop, ready to research any references that needed fact-checking. Jonas set his envelope down. So let's highlight the pros and cons. On the bright side, Holtman states they won't forcibly buy out homes, they promise a green buffer zone to preserve aesthetics, and they claim local shops will have a chance to relocate inside the new complex at discounted rates. That all sounds positive. Bethany nodded but tapped the strategic expansion potential bullet. Yes, but they also mention expansions if the city offers additional incentives. That leaves us vulnerable to them pushing further once they're established. My worry is a year or two down the road, they'll say, we need more space. Oops, guess we have to buy out a block or two. Officer Patel looked thoughtful. Legally, they can't force you out. But if property taxes rise or older residents get pressured to sell, that's effectively displacement by financial stress, rather than direct condemnation. Marissa jotted down a note. We should ask Holtman to formalize a cap or boundary that can't be crossed without another hearing. Something legally binding, not just a friendly statement. Jonas snapped his fingers. Exactly. A developer's promise means little if not codified. I also suspect they'll try sweeteners, like donating to local charities or providing certain upgrades. While that might help some aspects of the neighborhood, it can also buy them goodwill so expansions happen with less resistance. Marcus navigated to Holtman's website, scanning their track record with expansions in other towns. Here, Maple Glen. They started with a small complex, then a year in, they lobbied the council to rezone an adjacent block. That's precisely the scenario we're worried about. Bethany's expression hardened. Then we go into the next hearing demanding a legally fixed boundary. If they want expansions, we get an automatic hearing with a supermajority city council vote required. Jonas smiled at Bethany. Look at you, talking about supermajority votes. My, how far we've come from the days of suspecting me for suspicious electronics. She let out a sheepish laugh. I guess adversity has made us all more civically engaged, huh? The group hashed out a plan. They'd present to neighbors the details in Holtman's letter, gather consensus to propose a zoning boundary clause, and outline potential negative side effects if expansions were left vague. Marcus would also share examples from Maple Glen and other communities, so Arbor Heights saw how expansions could creep in. Despite the group's best efforts to stay united, not every resident shared their cautious stance. As news spread of Holtman's revised plan, some locals, particularly those living slightly further from the rumored development zone, saw only the positives. They liked the idea of new stores, modern facilities, and potentially higher home values. A few older residents, while concerned about rent or taxes, also felt a spark of excitement at the prospect of revitalization. At a casual midday gathering in the local park, Jonas encountered a friendly neighbor, Mr. Dempsey, who was surprisingly enthusiastic. "I see no reason to hamper Holtman," Dempsey declared, gesturing with a half-eaten sandwich. "We could use better shopping options. Why are folks so paranoid about expansions? Let them build. We can always handle problems later if they come up." Jonas tried to remain diplomatic. "I understand the appeal. But once the developer invests, it's harder to reverse expansions or mitigate traffic. We should ensure guardrails up front." Dempsey shrugged. "But we risk missing out if we clamp down too tight. Arbor Heights has been languishing a bit, some empty lots, outdated storefronts. Maybe new blood is exactly what we need." Jonas saw the man's point. Real progress could bring benefits. The question was whether the cost to the community's cherished identity was worth it. "We'll see how the city vote goes," Jonas said politely. "I just hope we find a balance." When Jonas relayed this conversation to Bethany, she sighed. "Yep, we're seeing lines being drawn. Some want the development wholeheartedly, others fear it. We need to keep the neighborhood from fracturing, like we did back with the hacking fiasco, but on a bigger scale." As the next city council session approached, new voices emerged in favor of Holtman. A local business alliance, including some younger entrepreneurs, advocated for the developer's project. They argued it might draw more customers and foot traffic, fueling a renaissance in Arbor Heights. Meanwhile, the historically minded Preservation Committee voiced concerns about architectural uniformity, worried that modern glass and steel structures would clash with the cozy, older homes. Caught in the middle, Jonas, Bethany, and their circle strove to maintain a moderate stance. They circulated a petition calling for conditional approval of Holtman's plan. Yes to building, but only if strict boundary and architectural guidelines were codified. Some neighbors eagerly signed, while others felt it was too restrictive or not restrictive enough. Marcus, in his own quest, discovered that Holtman's chosen architects were open to dialogue. He convinced Jonas and Bethany to email them, proposing design elements that melded with Arbor Heights' older aesthetic: brick facades, modest building heights, green spaces. To everyone's surprise, the architects responded positively, saying they'd incorporate some suggestions if approved by their corporate management. The question remained, would corporate override those niceties in pursuit of bigger profits? On a balmy Thursday evening, the city council once again opened its doors for a public hearing on Holtman's updated plan. A sense of déjà vu washed over Jonas as he stepped inside the bustling chamber. Cameras from local news were present, a sign that the story had gained traction beyond just Arbor Heights. The seats filled with a mix of supporters, skeptics, and those simply curious. Council President Nguyen, no relation to Marissa, rapped the gavel. "We are here to review Holtman Enterprises' revised proposal for the Arbor Heights mixed-use development. The floor is open first to the Holtman representative, Ms. Carly Thompson." Ms. Thompson took her place at the podium. She showcased new slides, featuring a slightly downsized complex with friendlier architecture and bullet points about safeguarding neighborhood heritage. She singled out potential job creation. Holtman estimates 200 new positions across retail, management, and maintenance. The site will incorporate a central plaza for community events. Additionally, we will respect existing property lines, offering a 50-foot green buffer. Future expansions, if any, would undergo separate council reviews. Cheers came from some corners, relieved that expansions required new approvals. But Jonas and Bethany remained watchful. What about the specifics? Once Ms. Thompson concluded, the council invited public comments. Bethany Green spoke first on behalf of the conditional approval petition. "We're pleased Holtman made genuine improvements," she said, voice quavering with nerves but steady in purpose. "However, we want an explicit boundary cap. 50 feet of green buffer can vanish if expansions are rubber-stamped later. We also request that local small businesses get priority leases in new commercial spaces, not overshadowed by national chains." She handed a stack of signed petition pages to a city clerk. Murmurs rippled, some in agreement, others in mild dissent. Next, Jonas took the mic, reinforcing the stance. We're not anti-development. Many of us see the potential benefits. But let's lock in these promises so that 3 years from now, we're not forced to watch entire blocks morph into corporate sprawl. While some applauded, a group wearing pro-progress badges groaned audibly, rolling their eyes. Jonas recognized Mr. Dempsey among them. The friction in the room underscored how the neighborhood's new unity was being tested again, this time along lines of careful development versus unfettered modernization. Officer Patel, who had come to observe and possibly speak if needed, managed to slip Jonas a supportive nod from her seat. He appreciated it. This hearing felt even more crucial than the previous ones, given that the city council planned to vote soon on whether to greenlight Holtman's plan. The next hour unfolded in a barrage of questions and comments. Mr. Griswold, previously a skeptic about being too soft, ironically demanded a strict no-expansion rule, aligning partially with Jonas and Bethany. A local bookstore owner expressed fear that big chain retail within the new complex would kill foot traffic to her beloved shop. Younger entrepreneurs argued that revitalization was essential to keep Arbor Heights from stagnating. Holtman's Ms. Thompson tried to address each concern. She promised that expansions couldn't bypass council oversight, offered that small businesses were welcome, and claimed chain retailers might not be the majority. Yet, Jonas noticed how often she couched statements in phrases like, "we anticipate," "we expect," and "likely." Nothing was guaranteed. Finally, Council President Nguyen announced, "We'll deliberate for the next hour. You may remain, but no further public comment. We'll take a preliminary vote tonight to see if this plan moves forward or gets tabled again." The entire chamber buzzed with tension. Jonas and Bethany exchanged glances, hearts pounding. If the plan passed as is, Arbor Heights would see partial protections but not all the strict measures they'd wanted. A few supporters of unconditional approval tried to approach Jonas, encouraging him to let the developer proceed, but Jonas politely stood his ground. While the council deliberated in a side room, Ms. Thompson approached Jonas. "Mr. Cooper, Ms. Green," she said quietly, "I sense a real divide in your community. I truly don't want to create animosity. My bosses, though, they push for maximizing potential. I'd like to find a middle ground that satisfies your boundary concerns but keeps the door open for organic growth." Bethany, shoulders tense, replied, "Holtman's track record suggests they often claim organic growth as a reason to gradually buy up more land. Are you prepared to sign something enforceable? A legal boundary that expansions must not cross without a supermajority of the council's vote and direct neighborhood input?" Ms. Thompson hesitated, then nodded. "I can propose that to corporate. If the city council sees a bridging compromise, maybe the plan gains easier passage. Let me talk to them." She hurried off to make a phone call, leaving Jonas and Bethany stunned. Marcus, who had joined them, let out a low whistle. Maybe she's sincere, or maybe it's a tactic. Either way, it's progress, right? Jonas exhaled. If Holtman truly put that in writing, it would address a big chunk of our concerns. But let's see if it's just talk. After the hour of deliberation, the council re-entered the chamber. President Nguyen cleared her throat. "We've heard from all sides. We appreciate Holtman's improvements and the community's thoughtful push for stronger protections. Here's our stance: Holtman's revised proposal is conditionally acceptable, pending an addendum that includes a legally binding boundary limit, plus a set procedure for expansions. We also require language ensuring local business preference in the new complex. If Holtman agrees, we'll schedule a final vote in 2 weeks to confirm. If not, we may reject the plan or table it indefinitely." A wave of chatter rippled through the attendees. Ms. Thompson stood, offering a polite smile. "On behalf of Holtman, we respect your conditions. We'll do our utmost to incorporate the city's requests within that 2-week window." Jonas felt a surge of relief. The entire community, from the older cautious folks to the pro-development crowd, seemed to find some satisfaction in the compromise. Council President Nguyen adjourned the session, letting people file out amid subdued optimism. At the exit, Ms. Thompson approached Jonas once more. "Looks like we're writing that boundary clause after all," she said with a wry grin. "We'll be in touch." Bethany offered a handshake. "Thank you for considering our perspective. We want a bright future for Arbor Heights, but we value the people and history here too." That evening, Jonas returned home, the tension of the hearing still buzzing in his mind. He strolled around his house, checking his router logs, a habit he'd never fully abandoned, then stepped outside to the backyard, where the moonlight painted silver trails across the lawn. The quiet hum of the neighborhood enveloped him, once a place of suspicion, now a place forging a new identity. Moments later, his phone chimed. It was a group message from Marissa, Bethany, and Marcus. "Bethany, we did it, guys, at least for now. Thanks to everyone's hard work. Let's keep on this until the final vote. Marissa, so proud of Arbor Heights. This place has come a long way. Marcus, if you need me for data or tech research, I'm here. Sorry again for my past misdeeds. Just happy to see real progress." Jonas typed a short reply, "Proud to be part of this. Let's meet soon to finalize next steps. Sleep well, everyone." Pocketing his phone, Jonas leaned against his back porch railing, letting the mild summer breeze wash over him. He couldn't help recalling the day he'd first encountered that mysterious device on his Wi-Fi, how a single small threat escalated into a confrontation, a 911 call, and eventually an entire chain of events that changed Arbor Heights. If any lesson stood out, it was that unity forged through adversity could outlast the forces that threatened to tear a community apart, be they tech-savvy pranksters or corporate expansions. He breathed deeply, absorbing the night's stillness. "We'll see what Holtman's final plan says," he murmured to himself. "But whatever comes, we'll face it together." His gaze drifted over the fence line to Bethany's house, where a faint light glowed in an upstairs window. She was likely reviewing notes or scanning more documents, her unstoppable drive both exasperating and admirable. Jonas couldn't help a small smile. Life was unpredictable, but in Arbor Heights, at least, they were learning how to handle it with empathy, direct communication, and a shared sense of home. A subtle shift had settled over Arbor Heights with the arrival of early autumn. Trees along the neighborhood's winding streets turned golden and amber, leaves drifting onto sidewalks that residents diligently swept. Yet under this picturesque surface, a sense of anticipation festered. Holtman Enterprises was due to unveil its final, revised plan at the upcoming city council session. One that would either confirm or deny the future shape of the community. Jonas Cooper, now something of a local figurehead for balanced development, found himself fielding questions from anxious neighbors almost daily. Some worried about a possible spree of home buyouts if property taxes rose, others feared losing the neighborhood's cozy feel to a sprawling, contemporary development. On the other hand, certain residents looked forward to the promised new shopping options and potential boosts to property values. Each day, Jonas walked past the same porch steps where, not too long ago, he discovered that unknown device piggybacking on his Wi-Fi. He couldn't help thinking about how one small invasion had spiraled into a chain of events that ultimately brought Arbor Heights closer together. The experience had taught him that unity was forged not just by good times, but by collective resolution in the face of adversity. Now, with Holtman's final proposal looming, that unity would be tested again. Amid the swirl of speculation, a new rumor emerged: Holtman might be preparing generous buyout offers for homeowners directly adjacent to the planned development zone. Word spread that a few elderly homeowners on Elmwood Avenue had received discreet letters from Holtman's representatives, hinting at above-market payouts for their properties, if they were open to selling within the next year. One afternoon, as Jonas strolled to the local cafe for a midday coffee, he bumped into Mrs. Delgado, an older woman living on Elmwood. She looked uneasy, clutching a letter in her hand. "Jonas," she said, glancing around to ensure no one overheard, "I got this from Holtman. They say they'd pay me 30% above market if I agree to a private sale before the city finalizes all the boundaries. I love my home, but that's a lot of money." Jonas read the letter quickly. It was polite, making no threats, yet it was undeniably enticement. "This is exactly what we were afraid of," he murmured. "They say they won't forcibly buy people out, but they can dangle big checks so that some folks might feel pressured anyway." Mrs. Delgado exhaled, eyes shining with uncertainty. My husband passed away last year, and I'm alone in that big house. The money could help me move nearer my daughter. But I also hate the idea of leaving everything behind because some corporation thinks they can sweet-talk me. What do I do? Jonas placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. It's your decision, but please don't rush. They can't push you to sign anything before we see the final city council plan. Maybe talk to your family, weigh the pros and cons, don't let them corner you. She nodded, still looking torn. As they parted, Jonas felt the weight of the real challenge. Holtman didn't need to forcibly evict anyone if they could systematically buy out properties from those who might find the offer too tempting. That threatened the entire notion of maintaining the community's character. That evening, Jonas joined Bethany Green, Marissa Nguyen, and Marcus Green at Bethany's cozy living room for another strategy session. The coffee table was covered in notes, city council agendas, and a half-eaten plate of cookies Bethany had baked. Jonas related the story of Mrs. Delgado's letter. Bethany sighed, pacing near the fireplace. We have to confirm if more neighbors received similar offers. If so, this might be Holtman's attempt to circumvent the boundary negotiations by preemptively buying up potential expansion lots. Marcus typed away on his laptop. I can check property records to see if Holtman set up any new shell companies to purchase local real estate. Sometimes developers do that to mask their expansions. Marissa steepled her fingers. We should also talk to the city about introducing a local ordinance that prevents such under-the-table buyouts until the final plan is decided. Or at least ensures homeowners are fully informed before they sell. Jonas nodded. We can't forbid people from selling if they genuinely want to. But we can push for transparency so no one is exploited by partial information or false promises. They decided to schedule another open community meeting, specifically about these rumored buyouts, encouraging neighbors to share if Holtman approached them. Bethany proposed distributing flyers and making phone calls. We can't let fear or confusion isolate each homeowner, she said, determination flaring in her eyes. We overcame suspicion once, now let's do it again. The next afternoon, Marcus Green called Jonas with an urgent tone in his voice. Jonas, I've been scanning public records as well as state corporation filings. Guess what? I found that a newly formed LLC, Dawson Acres LLC, bought 2 vacant lots on the edge of Elmwood just last week. The LLC's mailing address matches a known Holtman front in another county. They're already acquiring land around the boundary lines. Jonas's stomach tightened. This is bigger than we realized. They might be positioning themselves to wedge expansions even if the city council sets boundaries. If they buy enough adjacent parcels, they can come back in a year or two saying, we already own this land, let's rezone it for cohesive development. Marcus's keyboard clacked in the background. Exactly. I also see that they filed for a separate permit, something about preliminary soil assessments, probably checking feasibility for bigger building footprints. They're playing a long game. Jonas thanked him for the intel and quickly dialed Bethany, relaying the news. Her exasperated sigh crackled through the phone. We better bring this up at the next city hearing. I'll gather more signatures or statements from neighbors who were approached. The city must see Holtman's sneaky tactics. Even if it's technically legal, it's not the spirit of the compromise. Jonas agreed wholeheartedly. The last thing we want is a patchwork approach where they claim each new purchase as a logical extension of the main site. Let's keep shining a light on it. Within days, the local community center bustled again for a second open forum. Jonas and Bethany had spread the word that neighbors should come prepared to discuss these buyout letters. Several arrived clutching notices or reading from emails. Some expressed excitement. The sum is huge, I might retire comfortably, said one older man. Others felt unsettled, not wanting to leave Arbor Heights but uncertain about being surrounded by future commercial expansions if they stayed. Jonas stood before the group, next to Bethany. We're not telling anyone to reject a legitimate, beneficial offer. But we want you to make an informed choice. Understand that if multiple folks sell, we might lose the unified stance we built. Holtman might claim incremental expansions are unavoidable. Officer Patel, invited again as an observer, offered a brief statement. While this is primarily a civil and zoning matter, from a community relations standpoint, we've seen developments cause friction when half a block sells out while the other half remains. Sometimes that stirs resentment or drastically changes daily life for holdouts. A younger mother, Ms. Rios, raised a hand. I have 2 kids in the local school. If the area becomes commercial, do we risk rezoning schools or facing heavier traffic on school routes? No one's answered that. Marissa responded, we can ask the city to study traffic patterns in potential expansions. But that's precisely why we need your voices at the next hearing, so the city doesn't ignore these concerns. Bethany circulated a sign-up sheet for those willing to speak publicly or file statements with the council. As neighbors scribbled their names, Jonas felt a pang. Could Arbor Heights maintain the empathy it had discovered, or would this wave of buyouts fracture them into diverging interests? Marcus, perched at the back, typed vigorously on a tablet, capturing testimonies and contact info. Jonas recognized the determined look in the teen's eyes, a far cry from the guilt-ridden boy who once lurked in the shadows scanning private networks. We've come so far, Jonas muttered under his breath, let's not lose it now. Late that night, after the forum cleared out, Bethany asked Jonas to remain for a private chat. They stood amid the quiet community center, overhead fluorescent lights humming softly. Bethany's voice trembled slightly. I haven't told many people, but I also received a letter from Holtman's lawyer. My property is near the southwestern edge, close to the green buffer zone. They said they'd pay me a premium if I'd be an early collaborator, letting them use part of my yard for construction staging. I'd keep the rest of the property, but I'd essentially have building equipment around me for months. They even offered a monthly nuisance fee to sweeten the deal. Jonas frowned. That's cunning. They're basically converting you into a staging ground to reduce their overhead. And ironically, you're one of the most vocal about protecting the neighborhood's integrity. She exhaled a shaky breath. I can't lie, it's tempting. My finances aren't the greatest. I've poured a lot of time and money into community events. That monthly nuisance fee would help. But it feels like I'd be betraying everything we stand for, letting them in so easily. Jonas gently touched her shoulder. You do what's right for you. But I suspect you'll lose credibility if you side with them behind the scenes. Holtman might try to spin it, saying, even Bethany Green supports our construction. Bethany nodded, tears pricking her eyes. I know. I'm leaning toward rejecting it. The question is, will I regret turning down the money if things get tough? Jonas offered a small, supportive smile. One step at a time. You've always believed in the community. I trust your instincts. 1 week later, Holtman hosted a community outreach event at the local park, an attempt to woo residents with free food, fancy displays, and brochures painting the development as a modern paradise. Ms. Carly Thompson manned a booth, greeting passers-by with a practiced smile. Large banners displayed slogans like "A Bright Future for Arbor Heights" over scenic renderings of cozy shops, manicured walkways, and families strolling happily. Curious townspeople showed up, drawn by barbecue grills sending tasty aromas across the park. Jonas arrived with Marcus. Bethany was absent, saying she couldn't bear the corporate glitz after receiving that personal letter. Some neighbors, however, seemed charmed by the event, particularly those who hoped new commerce might revitalize the area. Marcus drifted to a corner where Holtman's staff displayed a scale model of the prospective commercial site, complete with miniature figurines representing shoppers. Jonas meandered to Ms. Thompson's booth. She greeted him warmly, though he noticed an undercurrent of tension in her eyes. Jonas, she said, offering a handshake, I'm glad you came. We want to show everyone we're serious about respecting Arbor Heights. He glanced at the promotional materials. They avoided mention of expansions or buyout letters, focusing on the immediate footprint. Your design is lovely, Jonas admitted. But we still need legally binding boundaries. And we're hearing about direct offers to buy property, some quite aggressive. Ms. Thompson sighed. I won't deny certain negotiations are in play, but that's typical of any development. We do want synergy with local residents. If some choose to sell willingly, we can expand. If not, we respect that. Yet that choice can be twisted by financial pressure, Jonas countered softly. Please, Ms. Thompson, push your management to finalize a plan that's clear and ethical. We want actual trust, not flashy illusions. She nodded solemnly. I'll try. After an hour at the event, Jonas left with a swirl of conflicting feelings. On the surface, Holtman appeared ready to compromise, but behind the scenes, they made private deals and teased buyouts, which risked undermining the carefully negotiated boundaries. The next day, Bethany called Jonas with an uncharacteristically weary tone. I made my decision, she said simply. I'm rejecting Holtman's offer to use my yard as a staging area. My property might become a target for them to buy, but I can't champion the neighborhood cause if I let them basically set up shop in my backyard. Jonas felt relief. I admire your stand. And hey, if things get messy, you've got allies. She sounded grateful. Thank you, Jonas. It's unsettling, but the community matters more. By the way, Ms. Delgado told me she's leaning toward staying put too, after hearing about the shady nature of these offers from Dawson Acres LLC. Maybe we can hold the line. Encouraged, Jonas believed that if enough neighbors refused to sign away their properties quickly, Holtman's ambitions for stealthy expansions might be stymied. The city council hearing, now just 2 weeks away, would be the next big test. Even as some neighbors rallied to preserve their homes, the underlying friction grew. The pro-development group, spearheaded by folks like Mr. Dempsey, argued at small gatherings that resisting Holtman would hamper progress. They claimed Jonas, Bethany, and their circle were fearmongering, preventing Arbor Heights from modernizing. A few heated sidewalk debates ensued, with accusations of stalling the future and selling out to big business tossed back and forth. One afternoon, Jonas found Mr. Dempsey in a heated argument with an elderly resident, Ms. Rios, by the local grocery store. Ms. Rios insisted that the quiet, family-friendly environment would vanish if expansions ran unchecked. Dempsey retorted that new tax revenue could enhance local services. Jonas stepped in as a mediator, using the approach he'd honed since the Wi-Fi fiasco. Let's not turn on each other, he said gently. We can find a middle ground, letting Holtman build responsibly, ensuring no forced buyouts or overshadowing of local culture. That's all we want. Dempsey relented somewhat. Ms. Rios calmed down. Still, Jonas recognized these divisions could intensify if the final plan failed to address key concerns. The day of the final city council vote arrived under a cool autumn sky. The leaves swirling on the courthouse steps felt symbolic, change was in the air. Residents filed in, many wearing expressions of guarded hope or simmering unease. Ms. Carly Thompson from Holtman was already seated, her briefcase stuffed with documents. Jonas and Bethany took seats near the front with Marissa and Marcus. Officer Patel and Officer Quinn, though not directly involved, sat quietly to observe. Council President Nguyen rapped the gavel. We reconvene to address Holtman Enterprises' final plan. We understand revisions incorporate boundary commitments and local business safeguards. Let's hear from Ms. Thompson. Stepping to the podium, Ms. Thompson began, Honorable Council members, we've integrated your prior feedback. Our final plan includes a robust, 50-foot green buffer, local business preference in initial leases, and explicit language that any expansions beyond this phase require an additional hearing with a 2/3 council vote. We believe this approach respects Arbor Heights while allowing beneficial development. She displayed updated slides. Key paragraphs from the revised contract scrolled overhead. Indeed, it contained language about expansions requiring city review. However, it also stated that voluntary property sales in adjacent lots were not restricted, a subtle nod to the buyout possibility. Council members asked clarifying questions about traffic studies, architectural guidelines, and how these expansions would be regulated. Ms. Thompson repeatedly stressed Holtman's commitment to working with the community in good faith. Now came public comment. Jonas and Bethany took the mic together, each delivering succinct remarks. Jonas acknowledged that Holtman had come a long way, praising the new boundary clause. But we remain concerned about private buyout letters, he added. We propose a transparent registry for any purchase offers within the boundary zone, ensuring each sale is clearly documented and not used to bypass council review. Bethany reiterated that her property was targeted for a staging area. She refused the offer, but worried about Holtman employing similar tactics on others. It's not an outright violation, she conceded, yet it undermines trust. We ask the council to require open disclosure of such deals, so homeowners know their rights and the neighborhood sees the bigger picture. One by one, other residents voiced opinions. Some embraced the plan, urging the council to pass it. Others demanded an even stricter no expansion clause. A few older homeowners, tearful, admitted they were tempted by Holtman's offers but worried about regret. Tension simmered. The council took everything under advisement, then retreated for a short recess to deliberate. When the council reconvened, President Nguyen addressed the crowd. We appreciate the robust dialogue. Holtman's plan has improved significantly, and we see genuine attempts to address concerns. However, many residents still fear stealth expansion through property buyouts. We propose an amendment requiring Holtman to publicly register any land purchases in the immediate buffer zone, subjecting expansions to additional city oversight. If Holtman agrees, we believe we can approve this final plan. Ms. Thompson looked momentarily taken aback. She conferred with colleagues in hushed tones. After a tense minute, she returned to the mic. We can accept a property purchase registry, she said, voice measured. In the spirit of transparency, we'll abide by those conditions if that's the council's will. An audible sigh of relief swept the room. The council then held a formal roll call vote. By a margin of 5-2, they passed the amended plan. Applause erupted from pockets of the crowd, while some left quietly, uncertain about how the final arrangement would play out in real life. But for Jonas, Bethany, and their supporters, it felt like a significant victory. The neighborhood had a measure of official protection, along with a system requiring Holtman to declare any expansions or buyouts. No one expected perfection, but at least they'd gained a fighting chance. Bethany, tears shining in her eyes, hugged Jonas. We did it, she whispered. We actually forced them to compromise on our terms. He grinned. Arbor Heights stands strong. This plan isn't perfect, but it's miles better than a free-for-all. Ms. Thompson approached them. Congratulations on your community's persistence, she said, extending a hand. We'll do our best to honor the agreement. And I hope we can continue open dialogue going forward. Jonas shook her hand, feeling both respect and lingering caution. We'll keep you to your word. But thank you for working with us. In the weeks following the final vote, life in Arbor Heights settled into a new normal. Holtman began preparing to break ground on the designated commercial plot, under the watchful gaze of city inspectors ensuring compliance with the newly minted boundary rules. Some residents braced for construction noise, but the knowledge that expansions couldn't just sprawl unannounced brought relief. The buyout letters didn't vanish completely, but as per the new registry requirement, each offer had to be disclosed to the city. This public transparency meant homeowners felt less pressured. Neighbors could see who was being approached, discuss pros and cons, and weigh if they wanted to remain or if leaving was truly in their best interest. Jonas personally assisted a few older residents in deciphering complex legal jargon in the letters, ensuring they weren't exploited. Bethany Green, newly confident in her stance, turned down Holtman's staging yard request and continued championing small community events. She even started a small charity drive to help lower-income homeowners manage rising property taxes if property values climbed. If we're going to build a future, she said at one local meeting, let's build it together, so nobody is left behind. Marcus, meanwhile, thrived in his Hackers for Good approach, volunteering at the library kiosk and collaborating with the city's IT department to set up secure municipal Wi-Fi hotspots. He was forgiven by most neighbors, who now saw him as a local success story, a teen who had pivoted from misguided hacking to public service. Officer Patel commented at a block party, if you want proof that second chances can yield big results, look at Marcus Green. Jonas, taking a rare moment of quiet, often reflected how differently everything might have turned out if not for the fiasco that started it all. He'd grown closer to many neighbors, found a genuine friend in Bethany, and discovered a calling in bridging gaps, whether digital or civic. The new commercial zone might bring change, some good, some messy, but Arbor Heights had learned to stand together and navigate the complexities with dialogue and empathy. As a final gesture of unity, the community planned a late autumn celebration in the local park, welcoming the official start of construction. Holtman, eager for positive public relations, sponsored half the event, providing tents, refreshments, and a stage for local performers. Jonas and Bethany oversaw the schedule, ensuring it included both light-hearted festivities, live music, barbecue, children's games, and serious informational booths, including the new property sale registry forms for anyone curious. Under crisp skies mottled by drifting leaves, families gathered on blankets while music played. A few Holtman representatives smiled tensely from their sponsor booth, aware that while an agreement had been forged, a watchful neighborhood meant no easy expansions in the future. Jonas chatted with Ms. Thompson briefly. She gave a cautious but cordial nod, acknowledging that so far, the arrangement held steady. Marcus ran a small, Tech for All stand, demonstrating security tips and helping older residents install anti-malware apps on their phones. He even taught a short session on recognizing phishing emails, receiving appreciative claps from folks who once only knew him as the boy who snuck onto their networks. At the day's end, the music quieted for a short speech. Bethany, stepping up on a small stage, cleared her throat. Arbor Heights has come a long way. We faced a hacking scare, overcame suspicions, and confronted a big development. We learned to talk first, gather facts, and stand together. Whatever changes come, I believe we can handle them by staying united. Thanks for being the best neighbors anyone could ask for. A wave of applause swept through the park. Jonas joined Bethany on stage, quietly adding, "I echo that. This neighborhood taught me about compassion, resilience, and the power of second chances. Whether in technology, personal mistakes, or major developments, understanding one another matters more than anything." Their short remarks ended in cheers, and the crowd dispersed into a mellow early evening glow. In that moment, Jonas felt a sense of closure. The fiasco that began with a single unauthorized Wi-Fi device had led to a new identity for Arbor Heights, a place not without disputes, but one that knew how to face them constructively. As dusk fell, Jonas strolled home, passing by the same houses that once dripped with suspicion. Lights in windows glowed warmly, the hum of a contented community. Upon reaching his front yard, he paused to admire his small flower bed, now withered from the autumn chill but still a symbol of personal growth. Then he spotted Bethany Green at her fence, waving. "Hey," she called softly, stepping forward. "Today was good, wasn't it? Feels like we're stepping into a calmer chapter, despite the development looming." Jonas nodded, crossing to meet her at the fence. "Yeah, we might see construction noise soon, but we have frameworks in place. No more secret expansions, no forced buyouts. We keep verifying, keep each other informed." She smiled. "It's funny, isn't it? We started out on such terrible footing, me suspecting you of who knows what, and now we're practically the neighborhood's problem-solving duo." His eyes crinkled with amusement. "Life's unpredictable. But I'm glad we ended up on this side of it all." They shared a moment of companionable silence. Street lamps buzzed on, casting halos of light across the quiet street. In the hush, Jonas thought back to the day Bethany first called 911 over his suspicious router tampering, how angry and humiliated he'd felt. Yet here they stood, leaning over the fence like longtime friends, having protected their neighborhood from a potential wave of unbridled commercial sprawl. Days slipped into weeks, the construction team starting preliminary work on Holtman's newly approved site. Fences went up around the designated area, small excavators dotted the landscape, and newly posted signs read, "Arbor Heights Marketplace, coming soon." Some in the community watched warily, but the knowledge that expansions required official oversight alleviated the worst fears. Jonas continued his role as a resource, assisting neighbors with reading any real estate letters, verifying that Holtman properly filed them in the city's public registry. He engaged with the city planning department to confirm whether each new step aligned with the plan. On weekends, he resumed casual hobbies. Gardening, volunteering at the library, even helping Marcus refine a safe community tech website that gave step-by-step guides to secure home networks. It felt good to harness the momentum from the hacking fiasco-turned-success story, ensuring Arbor Heights remained vigilant. Bethany, no longer needing to orchestrate crisis meetings, found time to rekindle old passions, crocheting, still a work in progress, organizing small potluck dinners, and writing heartfelt editorials in the local paper about the importance of preserving community ties amidst modernization. Her relationship with Jonas flourished beyond mere collaboration. These days, they teased each other about hobbies, confided about personal challenges, and even schemed up new neighborhood events. As for Marcus, he soared academically, balancing a part-time gig at the local IT firm with his online cybersecurity courses. Sometimes the boy marveled at how a moment of reckless hacking had led him here, respected, forgiven, and harnessing his skills for good. He'd even begun talking about applying to a renowned tech university. With each step forward, Arbor Heights proved that adversity could fuel growth if met with empathy, reason, and mutual accountability. Even so, the future contained unknown variables. Holtman might still attempt expansions, new disputes might arise, and the normal friction of daily life would continue. But the residents carried a blueprint now, a blueprint of communication, verifying facts before reacting, and trusting in the resilience they'd forged together. One crisp evening, Jonas, Bethany, Marcus, Marissa, and Officer Patel gathered on Jonas's front porch just to relax. No urgent meeting, no city hearing. Instead, they brought drinks and light snacks, enjoying each other's company. The air was cool, leaves rustling on the sidewalk. Over a small speaker, soft music played. "Feels nice, doesn't it?" Marissa commented, sipping her tea. "All that intensity, day after day, and now we get a moment to breathe." Marcus nodded. "But we can't get complacent. We have to watch how Holtman's project unfolds. Ensure they follow the new restrictions." Bethany patted his arm. "We will, but we also deserve to celebrate the fact we reached an actual compromise. We didn't just chase them away, nor did they steamroll us. That's huge." Officer Patel, leaning against the porch railing, observed them fondly. "I remember back when I first stepped onto Jonas's porch, responding to a call about suspicious activity. Never would have guessed you'd all become the neighborhood's guiding voices." Jonas chuckled, recalling that pivotal moment. "Indeed. Hard to believe how something so stressful could spark so much positive change." He paused, then raised his glass of sparkling cider. "To Arbor Heights, proof that real solutions come from listening, verifying facts, and standing together." They clinked glasses under the soft porch light, a quiet toast to everything that had tested and ultimately strengthened them. The night stretched on with easy conversation, discussing the best pizza place in town, teasing Marcus about a new tech gadget, and planning small gatherings for the upcoming holiday season. After they parted ways, Jonas lingered on the porch, arms folded as he gazed at the street. The hush of the late hour enveloped him like a comforting promise. He thought of the next day, the next year, the next decade. Challenges would arise, he was certain of it. But Arbor Heights had discovered a blueprint for handling adversity, a delicate combination of collective vigilance, open dialogue, and an unwavering commitment to the well-being of every resident. As the autumn breeze carried a faint hint of approaching winter, Jonas Cooper stepped inside, his heart full of gratitude. This was more than just a neighborhood now, it was a place that had looked fear in the eye and chosen empathy instead. And that choice, repeated time and again, was forging a legacy of resilience and unity that would guide them through all the unknown tomorrows. Summer had softly segued into autumn in Arbor Heights, leaving behind the warm breezes and ushering in cooler evenings. The big city council vote on Holtman Enterprises' amended plan had happened only weeks earlier, and while it brought relief to many, the reverberations of that decision continued to ripple across the neighborhood. Jonas Cooper, now recognized by neighbors as a calm mediator, had noticed a new pattern emerging: people were both optimistic and restless. The final plan included the newly minted boundary clause, ensuring expansions would require public registry of property purchases. That clause had prevented an immediate land grab, but rumors persisted that Holtman still wanted more. Some folks believed the compromise was just a temporary calm before the next storm. Bent over his modest front yard flower bed, Jonas found his mind churning with these thoughts. The flowers he'd planted in early summer were fading, but he'd discovered a new hobby in preparing the soil for cooler season blooms. Despite the tension swirling about future developments, he found solace in nurturing something tangible and grounded. As he tidied the garden, Bethany Green approached, hugging a sheaf of papers to her chest. She gave Jonas a quick wave. "Mind if I interrupt your green thumb session?" she asked lightly. He smiled. "Not at all. Garden can wait. What's on your mind?" Bethany exhaled, her posture suggesting she'd been carrying a burden. "I've been hearing a new set of rumors. Some staff from Holtman's architectural wing might be pushing for an additional complex, like a sports center or something, beyond the designated zone. It's not official, but it's enough to worry me." Jonas's jaw tightened. They can't just build outside the zone without city approval. That was the whole point of the new restrictions. Bethany nodded. "True, but if the developer is testing the waters, maybe meeting with small groups of residents to gauge interest in selling or overshadowing new corners of the neighborhood, it could cause the same anxiety all over again." She mentioned a friend who lived near the southwestern edge, who'd received a sports facility inquiry letter from an unnamed group that might be connected to Holtman. Jonas frowned. "We definitely need more info. If Holtman tries to create sister companies to buy property stealthily, they'll have to declare it, but they might do so in small increments, hoping no one notices." They agreed to meet that evening at Bethany's place, along with Marissa and Gwyn, Marcus Green, and any concerned neighbors. The last thing Jonas wanted was a renewed sense of betrayal or hush-hush deals creeping through the block. That afternoon, as Jonas walked to the local library, where Marcus had set up the digital awareness kiosk, he passed families returning from errands and an older couple leisurely strolling with a dog. The scene exuded warmth, a testament to how far Arbor Heights had come from the tension-laden days of misguided 911 calls and hacking crises. Yet, Jonas sensed a subtle undertow, like a collective breath half-held, waiting to see if Holtman's next moves would upend the fragile peace. Stepping inside the library's quiet ambience, Jonas spotted Marcus, who waved him over. The teen was helping a senior citizen install a new antivirus app on her tablet. Jonas waited until Marcus finished, then pulled him aside. "Bethany has new intel about potential expansions," Jonas said. "Something about an indoor sports facility." Marcus's brow furrowed. "I've heard nothing official from the city's record. But I'll do a quick check. Maybe there's a fresh LLC or permit request lurking." Jonas gave a wry smile. "We appreciate your detective work. Let's talk more tonight at Bethany's. This might be nothing or it might be a sign Holtman is testing boundaries again." Marcus turned back to the kiosk, glancing at the library's busy hallway. "I'll gather what I can. We shouldn't jump to worst-case scenarios, but we can't be complacent either. Remember how things escalated last time?" Jonas nodded, departing with a swirl of uncertainty in his chest. Even if this new rumor was false or simply a misunderstanding, it was crucial to stay vigilant. Arbor Heights had proven its resilience once, it could do so again, provided the community kept lines of communication wide open. Later that evening, Bethany's living room became the impromptu command center for a half-dozen concerned residents. The space felt familiar, the same comfortable couches, the same sense of seriousness tempered by neighborly camaraderie. Marissa and Gwyn arrived carrying a notepad and a few city documents. Officer Patel also dropped in, again emphasizing she was there only as an off-duty friend, not in an official capacity. Bethany began with a recap of the rumor, that a side extension or separate, amenities zone, was being floated by certain architecture staff from Holtman. No official proposals on city records, but we all recall how buyouts can stealthily open expansion avenues. Marcus, laptop perched on his knees, delivered his findings, he discovered references to a new LLC named Spry Recreation Partnerships, listing an address suspiciously close to Holtman's main office. No direct link existed yet, but patterns mirrored how Holtman had formed Dawson Acres LLC. It might be them, Marcus concluded. They could be fronting the next wave of purchases. Marissa sighed. This is exactly the scenario we worried about. They can't break the boundary clause easily, but if they secure enough adjacent parcels, they might propose a future sports facility as an independent project, bypassing some restrictions. Jonas set his jaw. We must remind the city council that the boundary clause extends to any Holtman-affiliated entity, not just the parent corporation. The final agreement was that expansions require official oversight, no matter the shell company involved. Bethany folded her arms, thoughtful. We must talk to neighbors who might be approached. Keep them informed. Meanwhile, we can do some legal digging. Is the city prepared to handle disguised expansions? Officer Patel offered insight. From a community relations angle, I suggest you gather statements from anyone receiving inquiries about property purchases for this so-called sports facility. The more documented evidence you have, the stronger your position if you confront Holtman or the city again. They all agreed. Before dispersing, Jonas, Bethany, and Marcus planned to canvass the southwestern blocks, politely asking if residents encountered such offers. Marissa volunteered to research city codes about separate commercial proposals that might circumvent the boundary clause. The group parted with a mix of weariness and resolve. They recognized the process wouldn't be a single fight but a series of smaller battles to protect Arbor Heights from creeping expansions that threatened their hard-won sense of community autonomy. During the next week, Jonas and Bethany methodically knocked on doors of the southwestern area, where rumors said the sports facility might be pitched. Some folks, like Ms. Rios, had received random calls asking if they'd consider selling. Another neighbor, Mr. Langley, recalled two polite young men in suits knocking on his door, inquiring about interest in turning parts of his large backyard into a recreational zone. Armed with these anecdotes, Jonas filled a spreadsheet, noting approximate dates, whether a phone call or letter was used, and any contact details provided. The pattern was eerily similar to the buyout push that preceded the final Holtman vote, multiple small attempts to gauge willingness to sell, likely from a shell company. That Saturday, Jonas reconvened with Marcus at the library, handing him the compiled data. Any luck confirming these new LLCs or phone numbers? Jonas asked. Marcus scanned the list, tapping away. I'll cross-check them with public phone directories and corporate filings. But they could be using burner lines or outside agencies. Let's see. Aha, this partial phone number matches a contact point used by Dawson Acres LLC previously. So it's definitely connected to Holtman, or at least the same circle. Jonas sighed. We'll present this to the city council, showing how they might be testing expansions under a different brand name. Even if the boundary clause stands, they can claim they're building a separate recreational space. We can't let them slip through the cracks. The suspicion rankled Jonas, but he steeled himself with the knowledge that Arbor Heights had confronted bigger obstacles. They had a network of supportive neighbors who learned how to unify rather than unravel. Word spread of the rumored sports facility. Some younger residents perked up, saying an indoor pool or gym might benefit the area, especially for youth activities. But older or more privacy-minded folks balked at the idea of bright lights, late-night noise, or increased traffic. The debate revived the old lines between pro-development voices and cautious preservationists. Even Jonas found himself approached by one of the newly minted Pro Sports Center group members. Look, Jonas, said a tall man in workout gear, this is progress, right? You can't cling to your garden and quiet streets forever. The city grows, we need recreational places. Let them build. Jonas responded calmly, I'm not against recreation. But the question is how and where it's built, and if they're using backdoor deals to bypass public scrutiny. The man shrugged dismissively. That's politics. Maybe hush-hush deals are how things get done. Doesn't mean it's bad. Jonas parted ways with a subdued sense of frustration. Not everyone valued the transparency Arbor Heights had worked so hard to achieve. Some were content letting big business shape the neighborhood for what they perceived as modern convenience. Late one night, Jonas was dozing off when a frantic text from Marcus jolted him awake. "Jonas, big find. I discovered a partial blueprint referencing an Arbor Heights Recreation and Commerce Annex. Possibly the sports facility plus more shops. Downloaded from a hidden subfolder on Holtman's website." Startled, Jonas called Marcus. The teen's excitement crackled through the phone. "It's basically a concept outline. It's not final or publicly posted, but it references expansions beyond the original boundary. Looks like they want to slip it in as a Phase 2 once they've secured more land." Jonas felt a chill. This means Holtman might intend to systematically buy southwestern lots, wait a year or two, then propose the second phase. The city council might re-argue, but with partial land in Holtman's control, that re-arguing could be skewed. "Exactly," Marcus agreed. "We can't let them gather land quietly. The boundary clause says expansions need new hearings, but if Holtman already owns half the block, the pressure might be huge." Jonas exhaled a tense breath. "We need to bring this to the city's attention soon. Even if it's not official, it shows intent. Let me call Bethany and set up a meeting tomorrow." "Good work, Marcus." As Jonas hung up, he realized just how precarious Arbor Heights' situation remained. Holtman was playing a long game, and the neighborhood had to remain proactive, again. By the next morning, Jonas had alerted Bethany and Marissa, who in turn quickly gathered the usual group. They forwarded the partial blueprint to Council President Nguyen with a note explaining Marcus's discovery. A special council session was scheduled, this time focusing on Phase 2 concerns, even though Holtman insisted no second phase was currently planned. Inside City Hall's smaller meeting room, Jonas, Bethany, and Marcus sat opposite Ms. Carly Thompson and two Holtman legal representatives. Council President Nguyen presided, flanked by a few staffers. Jonas presented the partial blueprint, courtesy of Marcus's sleuthing. Bethany addressed Ms. Thompson. "We're concerned. This document references expansions beyond the official boundary, naming the southwestern lots. We also have logs of suspicious buyout attempts. This contradicts your stated commitment to transparency." One Holtman lawyer, an older gentleman in a sharp suit, tried to deflect. "This so-called blueprint is an internal concept for potential future developments across multiple towns. It's not specifically tied to Arbor Heights. We disclaim any final intentions." Marcus, nervously clearing his throat, said, "The references to Arbor Heights Recreation and Commerce Annex are pretty explicit, sir. And the file path in your website subdirectory used the same code name we found on your Dawson Acres LLC documents." Ms. Thompson frowned but held her composure. "We apologize if this created confusion. Our design teams often brainstorm expansions. That doesn't mean we've committed to building them here. We'd have to comply with boundary clauses, after all." Council President Nguyen tapped a pen. "The boundary clause covers expansions within the designated zone. If you buy separate parcels beyond it, you might classify that as a new project. We need clarity on whether you're circumventing these rules." The Holtman reps exchanged glances. Their lawyer spoke. "We affirm we'll abide by the city's requirement for any additional commercial developments. We can't forcibly skip those steps. If we purchased southwestern lots, we'd still present a new proposal to the council. No laws are being broken." Jonas leaned forward. "Yet the pattern of stealth inquiries and your internal blueprint strongly suggests you aim to set the stage for a second wave. Once you own the land, you'll claim it's natural to expand." After a tense back-and-forth, the council ended with a resolution reinforcing that any Phase 2 expansions also fell under the original boundary restrictions. "We're effectively extending the boundary clause to any lot Holtman or its affiliates acquire," President Nguyen declared. "If they want recreational or commercial expansions, they must publicly apply for an extension of the existing plan. We'll enforce that thoroughly." Though it wasn't a direct condemnation, it reassured Jonas and Bethany that the city recognized Holtman's behind-the-scenes maneuvers. The developer's team looked annoyed but didn't protest. They left the session with forced cordial smiles, while Jonas, Bethany, and Marcus felt a guarded relief. In the weeks that followed, Holtman's official site preparation advanced within the original boundary zone, while southwestern expansions remained locked in speculation. The new city resolution forced them to subject any future project, including a rumored sports facility, to the same rigorous oversight. Meanwhile, the transparency requirement meant any newly purchased parcel by Holtman or their affiliates popped up on a public registry, alerting neighbors at once. Though tensions persisted, some older folk still felt anxious, some younger families thirsted for new amenities, the community at least had a robust system. The fiasco that once was purely about hacking and mistrust had expanded into a broader exercise in citizen engagement. Jonas found it remarkable how the neighborhood consistently rose to challenges through dialogue rather than letting fear or apathy fester. Bethany, for her part, expressed relief each day she checked her mailbox and found no new offers from Holtman. She resumed normal life, crocheting improved, potluck dinners resumed, and she even teased Jonas about him being so civic-minded that he might run for city council someday. Jonas laughed off the idea, preferring to help from a grassroots level. Marcus continued balancing his IT job and cybersecurity courses. He occasionally discovered small anomalies, like domain registrations for new Holtman Shell LLCs, but each time, the new city guidelines forced public acknowledgement of any property purchase. The result was a neighborhood that no longer waited passively for corporations to define their fate. Instead, they proactively used the laws they'd helped shape. One crisp evening, Jonas walked home along a quiet street, noticing the gentle glow from porch lights across houses, each a testament to the bond that had formed among neighbors. In some intangible way, Arbor Heights had outgrown the naive assumption that all would remain static, just as it had outgrown the hostility that once marred its unity. The threat of expansion still loomed, but the people had found their voice, set rules, and proven they wouldn't be bypassed in silence. As Jonas unlocked his front door, he reflected on how this story had begun with a stolen Wi-Fi connection, a single intrusion that had triggered an entire community's awakening. Now, they faced a corporate giant with cunning lawyers and deep pockets. And yet, that same community spirit gave them a chance to shape their future on their own terms. Tucking away his keys, Jonas felt a calm sense of resolve. Arbor Heights remained a place of empathy, vigilance, and neighborly care, and for now, that was enough to guide them through whatever expansions or challenges might come next. A few months after the city council's extended boundary ruling, Arbor Heights pulsed with the sights and sounds of ongoing construction. Holtman Enterprises had broken ground on their carefully approved commercial complex, complete with a 50-foot green buffer and transparent registry for any adjacent property purchases. Heavy machinery rolled down main roads, while neon-vested workers hammered and welded, shaping the emergent Arbor Heights marketplace. Jonas Cooper, glancing out his front window at the hum of activity in the distance, marveled at how a once quiet neighborhood had adjusted to this new normal. He recalled the swirl of controversies, hackers, misguided 911 calls, a corporate incursion, and realized that through it all, the community had discovered a deeper unity. The old fears, though not entirely gone, had been replaced by a collective commitment to accountability. With each passing day, the neighbors learned to cope with occasional noise and dust, secure in the knowledge that expansions could no longer creep unnoticed. The newly reinforced boundary clause and property purchase registry provided a sense of control, even for those who disliked the bustle of modern development. And if a rumored sports facility or second-phase annex tried to slip in, Jonas, Bethany Green, and the watchful eyes of Arbor Heights would be ready. Bethany Green often joked that she'd become an unofficial development liaison, fielding calls from older neighbors anxious about property taxes or from younger families eager for the new shops. Though her crocheting still needed work, her leadership in bridging residents' concerns with city officials only improved. Officers Patel and Quinn commended her at a small block party for how she'd turned a near fiasco into an opportunity for consistent citizen engagement. Marcus Green's transformation felt just as profound. Once identified as the local Wi-Fi hacker, he now championed daily digital security tips. Whenever a resident spotted suspicious phone calls or questionable texts referencing real estate deals, Marcus was the first line of defense, fact-checking phone numbers, verifying legitimacy, and ensuring no quiet infiltration threatened the southwestern lots. Amid the swirl of continuing negotiations and communal watchfulness, Jonas sensed a quiet pride in how Arbor Heights had handled it all. Even the pro-development voices recognized the benefit of a structured approach. They had new commerce on the horizon, cafes, boutique shops, maybe even a small grocery branch, without sacrificing the soul of the neighborhood. Sure, some tension lingered, but it was overshadowed by a sense that adversity, tackled with empathy and unity, didn't have to tear them apart. One bright weekend, Jonas and Bethany strolled together down an older, tree-lined lane that would soon connect to the new marketplace. Workers had begun landscaping the 50-foot green buffer, planting rows of saplings meant to blend the old residential streets with the modern complex. To an outsider, it might seem a small measure, but to Arbor Heights, it was a tangible symbol that the big developer had been forced to integrate rather than bulldoze. Bethany paused, resting a hand on a newly planted sapling. "Amazing, isn't it?" she remarked. "We demanded they respect our space, and here we are, with a brand new buffer zone that ensures we're not overshadowed by skyscrapers." Jonas gave a nod, watching the breeze ripple through the tree's fragile leaves. "We'll see how it matures. But yes, it's progress I can accept." He smiled, turning to Bethany. "And I'm proud of how you, me, Marcus, and everyone else overcame so many conflicts, from Wi-Fi hacks to corporate expansions. Now, we welcome the future on our own terms." Bethany returned the smile, her gaze drifting over the half-finished buildings. "I never thought that day I called 911, on you, of all people, would lead to such a journey for the whole neighborhood. It's humbling how a single misunderstanding can spark a deeper understanding in the end." Jonas chuckled softly. "Life is full of irony. But I'll take the outcome we have now, over the paranoia and chaos that once plagued Arbor Heights." They walked on, the fresh leaves overhead reminding them that while challenges remain, hope and vigilance continue to define their community. The modern complex might soon open, bringing new rhythms and faces to the neighborhood, but they were ready. Just as they overcame misguided assumptions in the past, they'd address every new hurdle with open communication, empathy, and unwavering neighborly support. With the months rolling on, Arbor Heights settled into a delicate balance, ongoing construction in the designated zone, a watchful community ensuring expansions stayed within the newly enforced boundaries, and a calmer, more connected group of neighbors than ever before. Jonas Cooper sometimes strolled through the nighttime stillness, reminiscent of the era before the fiasco, only now, he noticed intangible improvements, fewer walls between neighbors, fewer whispered suspicions. Bethany Green, too, felt that shift. After her many potlucks, crocheting adventures, and leadership in the fight for local autonomy, she re-emerged as the unofficial caretaker of community morale. She no longer felt the pang of guilt over calling 911 on Jonas for suspicious router tampering. Instead, she channeled the lessons gleaned from that event into forging understanding rather than jumping to conclusions. Meanwhile, Marcus Green approached a milestone, college acceptance letters. His unwavering passion for ethical hacking and community-oriented tech solutions earned him a spot at a reputable tech university. The once wayward teen stood at Jonas's door one afternoon, letter in hand, tears in his eyes. "Jonas, they accepted me," he said, voice quavering with disbelief. "I mean, all that trouble I caused, who would have thought I'd end up with a scholarship to study cybersecurity?" Jonas beamed, remembering the nerve-wracking day he discovered Marcus's unauthorized device lurking on his Wi-Fi. "You earned it. Proving to everyone that your talents can serve the community made all the difference." Marcus lowered his gaze, heartfelt gratitude radiating from him. "I have you, Bethany, and so many others to thank. You gave me a chance to fix my mistakes. I won't waste it." In the culminating days before Marcus's departure for college, the southwestern corner of Arbor Heights saw a small flurry of renewed buyout attempts, most of which fizzled under the glare of the city's new transparency rules. Jonas helped two older residents decode letters promising them enormous sums if they sold, but they ultimately decided to remain. The green buffer zone thrived, trees taking root, bridging the old and the new. On a mild evening, Jonas, Bethany, Marissa, Officer Patel, and Marcus gathered for a casual dinner at a newly opened cafe in the partially completed marketplace. The developer's presence was undeniable: glass storefronts, modern architecture, and polished sidewalks. Yet the 50-foot buffer, lined with maturing saplings, separated the modern from the quaint. Glancing over the mesmerizing lights reflecting on the cafe's windows, Jonas raised a small toast of iced tea. To Arbor Heights, proof that even with expansions, buyouts, or hacking incidents, we remain a community that fosters empathy, dialogue, and second chances. They clinked glasses gently. Marcus, eyes shining with excitement for college, added, to never letting fear or corporate might overshadow our humanity. Under the cafe's warm glow, they smiled, each recalling personal journeys shaped by adversity. The bustling commercial zone symbolized future challenges, but it no longer inspired dread, because the residents had carved out binding boundaries and robust communication channels, ensuring that any large-scale changes would be confronted collectively, with clarity and compassion. And so, Arbor Heights stepped forward into tomorrow, secure in the knowledge that a single fiasco had blossomed into a lasting unity that big business, Wi-Fi hackers, and personal misunderstandings alike couldn't erase. Life often reminds us that a single misunderstanding can spark deeper connections if we approach it with empathy rather than fear. In the story of Jonas and his neighbors, we see how a small act, discovering an unfamiliar device on a home network, led to suspicion, tension, and even a call to the police. Yet through honest dialogue, patience, and a willingness to see each other's perspective, a divided community found unity. This journey teaches us that our assumptions can be just as harmful as the wrongdoing we suspect. By verifying facts before we judge, reaching out with kindness instead of hostility, and offering second chances where appropriate, we foster a culture of trust that can overcome even the largest challenges. Whether it's protecting our digital privacy or addressing a looming corporate threat, the real strength lies in neighbors collaborating, sharing knowledge, and staying vigilant without letting paranoia destroy valuable bonds. For older adults, who have witnessed the subtle harm that fear and division can inflict, this story offers a reassuring truth. No matter how complex the modern world becomes, genuine conversation and a bit of grace can mend relationships and safeguard our sense of belonging. Rather than yielding to knee-jerk suspicion, we can protect what matters by staying informed, supporting each other, and remembering that everyone is capable of growth. If this resonates with you, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell to stay updated. Let's keep learning and growing together, transforming even the most daunting obstacles into opportunities for empathy, wisdom, and unity.